first thing that bothered me was the speed. Not fast, not reckless, too slow. I remember staring at the radar on my dash and thinking it had to be broken. The number blinked back at me, 23 miles per hour, on a highway where the limit was 65. The road was empty, completely empty. Just a long stretch of black asphalt cutting through farmland and patches of woods outside a small town most people had never heard of. It was 1:48 in the morning. My shift had another 4 hours left, and that car was crawling down the highway like it had nowhere to be. I watched it for almost a full minute before I did anything. Just sitting there on the shoulder with my headlights off, engine humming quietly. The sedan passed me without speeding up. Dark gray, older model, maybe early 2000s. No damage, no swerving, just slow, too slow. I pulled out behind it and flipped my headlights on. The car didn't react. No brake lights, no change in speed, just the same steady crawl down the road. I glanced down at the radar again. 23. I remember thinking maybe the driver was drunk, or maybe elderly. Someone confused about where they were. It happens more than people think on night shift. Still, something about it felt strange. The highway stretched straight for miles in both directions. Flat farmland on the left, a line of trees on the right. No houses, no businesses, no other cars, just the two of us. I let the cruiser roll closer behind the sedan. Dispatch crackled softly on the radio. Someone from another county reporting a deer strike. Normal night stuff. Nothing unusual. But the closer I got to the car, the more something felt off. The driver never checked their mirrors, never adjusted their speed, never drifted. They just kept the wheel perfectly straight. 23 miles an hour, like they were locked into it. I finally flicked my lights on. Red and blue washed across the back of the sedan and the empty highway around us. Normally, when you light someone up, there's an immediate reaction. Brake lights, a signal, some kind of hesitation. This driver did nothing. They just kept going. Same speed, same straight line. For a few seconds, I honestly thought maybe they hadn't seen me, but the road was pitch black out here. My lights were the only thing visible for miles. There was no way they didn't notice. I hit the siren once. Just a quick chirp. The sedan kept rolling. 23. A strange feeling started creeping up the back of my neck. Not fear exactly, just unease. I've been on night patrol long enough to know when something doesn't feel right, and this didn't. Finally, after almost another 30 seconds, the sedan drifted slightly toward the shoulder. Slow, careful, like the driver had only just realized I was there. The tires rolled over the rumble strip. The car stopped halfway onto the gravel shoulder, engine still running. I pulled in behind them, leaving the usual gap. My headlights lit up the rear of the vehicle. The back window was dark, too dark. It almost looked tinted, but older cars like that rarely had factory tint that heavy. I sat there for a moment, watching, waiting for movement. Usually drivers start shifting around right away, reaching for their license, checking mirrors, looking back at the cruiser. This one didn't move at all. No silhouette, no head turning, nothing, just a still figure in the driver's seat. My radio crackled again. Unit 214 status checked. I picked up the mic without taking my eyes off the car. 214, traffic stop Highway 6, mile marker 42, gray sedan. Copy. I set the radio back down. For some reason, I kept staring at the rear window, trying to see inside, but the reflection from my headlights made it almost impossible. All I could see was a faint outline of the driver's head. Still, perfectly still. I opened my door and stepped out into the night. The air was cold, the kind that seeps through your uniform. Out here, away from town lights, the darkness felt heavier. The only sounds were the cruiser engine and the quiet ticking of the sedan's motor. I walked up the driver's side slowly, gravel crunching under my boots. My flashlight beam slid across the back of the car. The license plate looked normal. No obvious damage. No bumper stickers. Nothing personal about it at all. Just a plain gray sedan sitting alone on an empty highway. When I got closer, I angled the flashlight toward the driver's side mirror. That's when I saw the driver clearly for the first time. A man, maybe mid-40s, short hair, both hands on the wheel, and staring straight ahead. Not at the mirror, not at me, just straight down the highway. I stopped next to the window, knocked twice. Evening. No response. The man didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even shift his eyes. I knocked again, a little louder. Sir. Still nothing. Now I could see his face clearly through the glass, and something about it made my stomach tighten. Not because he looked angry or scared. It was the opposite. He looked calm, too calm. His eyes were open, but they didn't focus on anything. They were just pointed forward, like he was staring through the road, through the trees, through everything. I leaned down slightly to look closer. Sir, can you hear me? Nothing. The engine hummed softly. A faint smell of warm oil drifted from the car, and the man just sat there, hands on the wheel, eyes forward, not moving, not blinking. For a second, I wondered if he was asleep with his eyes open. It sounds strange, but I've seen weirder things during night shift. I knocked harder, 3 sharp hits on the glass. The sound echoed down the empty highway. The driver finally reacted, but not the way I expected. Slowly, very slowly, his head turned, not toward me, toward the passenger seat, like he was looking at someone sitting next to him. I felt a small chill crawl through my chest, because from where I was standing, the passenger seat was empty. The man stared at that empty seat for several seconds. Then just as slowly, he turned his head back toward the road. His hands never moved from the steering wheel. His expression didn't change, and he still hadn't looked at me once. I tapped the glass again. Sir, I need you to roll down the window. No response, just the quiet hum of the engine. I shined my flashlight across the interior. The beam slid over the dashboard, the seats, the empty passenger side, and that's when something else caught my attention. The rear view mirror. It was angled downward, not toward the back window, but toward the back seat, like someone had adjusted it to watch whoever was sitting behind them. Except when I lifted the flashlight and checked, the back seat looked empty too. I stood there for a few seconds longer, waiting, watching. The driver didn't move again, didn't speak, didn't acknowledge me at all. And for the first time that night, a quiet thought slipped into the back of my mind. Something about this stop was wrong. Not illegal, not dangerous, just wrong. I reached down to my shoulder radio. Dispatch, run plate when ready. The numbers were easy enough to read in the light. Dispatch answered a few seconds later. Stand by. I kept watching the driver, still staring forward, still completely silent. Another breeze rolled across the highway, whispering through the trees beside the road. Then the radio crackled again. But this time, dispatch sounded confused. 214, can you confirm that plate? I frowned. Affirmative. A pause. Longer this time. Then dispatch spoke again, and what they said made the back of my neck go cold. Unit 214, that plate shouldn't be on the road. Dispatch said the car only had 1 occupant. I remember looking down at the radio like maybe I heard it wrong. Then I looked back at the sedan, because I knew what I saw. There was someone in the back seat. Not clearly, not perfectly, but enough that my brain filled in the shape. A person sitting behind the driver, slightly leaned forward, just a darker shadow inside the darkness. I spoke into the radio again. Dispatch confirmed that. A pause. Then the woman on the other end answered. Plate returns to a gray 2003. Sedan registered to a Daniel Harper. No other occupants listed. No warrants. No alerts. Her voice sounded normal, routine, but my eyes were still on the rear window, and that shadow was still there. Dispatch, I said slowly. I think there's someone else in the vehicle. Another pause, then a soft sigh through speaker. You see 2 people? Affirmative. Registration only lists 1. I didn't answer right away, because at that moment something inside the car shifted, just slightly, like someone in the back seat adjusted their posture. My stomach tightened. I stepped a little closer to the rear window and angled my flashlight. The beam slid through the glass. It hit the back seat. Empty fabric. Wrinkled cloth. Nothing there. I frowned. Then I stepped back toward the driver's window. The shadow came back. Same shape. Same position behind the driver's shoulder. It made no sense. From the rear window, the seat looked empty. From the side, it looked occupied. I tried to convince myself it was just the angle. Light reflections do strange things at night. Still, I didn't like it. I leaned toward the driver's window again and tapped harder this time. Sir, the man didn't react. He still stared straight ahead. His hand still gripped the wheel. Knuckles pale and the dashboard glow. Sir, I need you to roll the window down. Nothing. His chest moved slightly with slow breathing. But that was it. No eye movement. No head turn. No acknowledgement that I was even standing there. It felt less like a traffic stop and more like I was standing beside a statue. The kind placed inside a wax museum. Perfectly still. Perfectly lifeless. Except he was breathing. I took a small step back and swept my flashlight across the backseat again from the driver's side. This time the beam caught something. Movement. Small. Slow. A shape pulling slightly away from the light. I froze. My pulse climbed instantly. Dispatch. I said quietly into my shoulder mic. Go ahead. I'm requesting another unit. There was a pause. Reason. I kept watching the rear window. The shadow moved again. Just enough that I couldn't ignore it anymore. Possible second occupant, I said. Dispatch hesitated. Then she answered. Copy. Nearest unit is about 15 minutes out. 15 minutes. Out here, that might as well have been an hour. The highway was still silent around us. No passing headlights. No distant engines. Just wind brushing through the tree line and the low hum of the sedan's motor. I tried the door handle. Locked. I knocked again. Harder this time. Sir, roll the window down. For a moment, I thought nothing would happen. Then the driver's lips moved. Barely. So small I almost missed it. But he still didn't look at me. He whispered something. I leaned closer to the glass. What was that? His lips moved again. The sound was so quiet it barely reached through the glass. Don't. My stomach tightened. Don't what? The man swallowed slowly. Then his eyes flicked upward. Not toward me. Toward the rear-view mirror. He stared at it. And for the first time, his face showed emotion. Fear. Real fear. His lips trembled slightly. Then he whispered again. Don't make it look at you. For a moment the world seemed to go quiet. Even the wind. Even the engine noise. My brain tried to process what he said. Make what look at me? Before I could ask, the rear-view mirror shifted. Just a little. Like someone had touched it. My eyes followed the mirror. And that's when I saw it clearly. The back seat. There was someone there. A figure sitting directly behind the driver. Leaning forward. Close to his shoulder. Too close. But the strange part wasn't the position. It was the shape. The body looked wrong. Too tall for the seat. The head almost touched the ceiling. The shoulders stretched wider than the space allowed. And the face, I couldn't see it. Not fully, because the figure was looking down, its chin almost resting near the driver's ear, like it was studying him. Listening to him breathe, my heart started pounding in my ears. I blinked hard, looked again. The back seat was empty, completely empty. The fabric lay smooth and untouched. No one there. I stepped back from the window, slowly. My pulse felt loud now. Too loud. The driver still stared forward. His breathing had gotten faster. Sweat glistened along his temple. You see it? He whispered suddenly. I looked back at him. You see it now. His eyes stayed locked on the road ahead, but tears were slowly forming in them. Sir, I said carefully, there's nobody back there. His head twitched slightly, almost like he wanted to look behind him, but couldn't. I tried that, he whispered. My stomach twisted. Tried what? His fingers tightened around the wheel. So many times. A cold breeze rolled across the highway. The trees whispered softly in the darkness. Then the driver spoke again. They don't like when you look. Something moved behind him. This time I didn't need the mirror to see it. The rear seat fabric pressed down slightly, like weight had just shifted onto it. My chest tightened, because nothing was visible, but the seat definitely moved. I lifted my flashlight slowly and pointed it toward the back seat again. Empty, but the cushion stayed pressed down, as if someone invisible was sitting there. My brain tried to reject it, tried to explain it away. Old suspension, loose fabric, something mechanical. But the driver started shaking, small tremors at first, then worse. "Please," he whispered. His voice cracked. "Don't shine the light back there." My grip on the flashlight tightened. "Why?" His eyes filled with tears now, because for the first time, he slowly turned his head toward me. And when our eyes met, I saw pure exhaustion, the kind that comes from being afraid for too long. I think it thinks you can see it. The flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. Behind him, the seat cushion sank just a little deeper, like something leaned forward, and for the first time that night, I had the clear feeling that whatever was sitting back there was now looking directly at me. The car was gone before backup arrived. That's the part that still bothers me the most. 1 second it was sitting right there on the shoulder, engine humming, headlights cutting through the empty highway, the driver frozen behind the wheel, that invisible weight pressing down into backseat, and the next second, nothing. I remember turning my head toward the road for just a moment. I think I heard something in the trees, maybe wind, maybe an animal. But when I looked back at the sedan, the driver's door was closed, the headlights were off, and the entire car was gone, not speeding away, not pulling onto the road, just gone, like someone had erased it. I stood there for a few seconds trying to make sense of it. My brain kept replaying the last thing the driver said. "I think it thinks you can see it." The highway stretched empty in both directions. No taillights fading into distance. No engine noise. No gravel kicking up from the shoulder. Just darkness. When the second unit arrived 15 minutes later, they didn't believe a word of it. I didn't blame them. I barely believed it myself. We searched the area for almost an hour, drove the road both directions, checked the tree line with spotlights, even walked parts of the shoulder. No tire tracks leaving the road. No sign a car had ever turned around. No broken brush in the woods. Nothing. Dispatch kept repeating the same thing over the radio. The plate I ran was registered to a man named Daniel Harper. But the strange part was the date. The car hadn't been on the road in years. The registration had expired 7 years earlier, and according to the report attached to it, the vehicle had been involved in a fatal accident. Same highway, same stretch of road, late at night, single car collision, driver killed instantly. The name in the report was Daniel Harper, the same man sitting behind that steering wheel. I didn't say much after that. I wrote the report, left out the parts one knew nobody would accept, and eventually life moved on. I transferred counties about a year later. Different roads, different towns, different shift. For a while I convinced myself it had been stress, long nights, my brain playing tricks on me. But there was one thing I never forgot, the rear view mirror. It wasn't angled toward the road. It was angled toward the back seat, like the driver had been watching something behind him. For 7 years, I avoided that highway, not on purpose. Just never had a reason to drive it again, until last winter. I was visiting an old friend who still worked in that county. We grabbed dinner, talked about old cases. Nothing unusual. By the time I left, it was late, almost 2 a.m., cold night, light fog settling over the fields. My GPS suggested the fastest route home, and without thinking about it, I followed it. I didn't realize where I was until I saw the sign. Highway 6, mile marker 38. My stomach tightened a little. 7 years, and the place looked exactly the same. Long empty road, trees lining the shoulder, dark farmland stretching into nothing. My headlights cut through the fog in narrow beams. For a moment, I thought about turning around, but it felt silly. It had been years. Just a road, just a memory. I kept driving. The radio murmured quietly in the background, some late-night talk show host discussing nothing important. Then I noticed something ahead, a pair of taillights, far down the highway, moving slowly, At first, I didn't think anything of it, but as I got closer, the speed difference became obvious. They were crawling. My chest tightened slightly. I checked my speed, 62. Then I looked at the distance closing between us. The car ahead was barely moving, 20-something maybe, just like before. The fog thinned for a moment, and my headlights reached the vehicle clearly. Gray sedan, older model. My fingers slowly tightened on the steering wheel. No, I whispered quietly to myself. Cars like that were everywhere. It meant nothing, just a coincidence. Still, I eased my foot off the gas. The distance closed. The shape of the car became clearer. Same body style, same faded paint, same narrow brake lights. My heart started beating faster now. I leaned forward slightly in my seat, trying to see the license plate. The sedan drifted slightly onto the shoulder, just like it had that night. And then it stopped right beside mile marker 42, the exact same place. My headlights washed over the rear of the car. The fog rolled quietly across the road. For a moment, I just sat there, engine idling, hands gripping the wheel. I told myself to keep driving, just pass it, go home. But something pulled at me. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. The kind of feeling you get when a memory refuses to stay buried. I slowed the car and rolled closer. My headlights illuminated the rear window. Dark glass, too dark to see inside. The driver's silhouette sat perfectly still behind the wheel. My pulse thudded in my ears. I leaned slightly toward the passenger window to get a better angle. And that's when I saw the rear view mirror, angled downward toward the back seat, exactly the way it had been before. My breath caught in my throat. The driver's head was tilted slightly forward, hands resting on the steering wheel, just like the night I stopped him. And for a moment, I thought about what the man had whispered through the glass. They don't like when you look. I should have kept driving. I know that now, but something inside me needed to know. I lifted my phone slowly and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the fog and shined into the rear window. The back seat looked empty, just dark fabric. No shapes, no movement. Relief washed through me for a brief second. Then the driver's head moved, slowly, just like it had years ago. But this time, he didn't turn toward the passenger seat. He turned toward the rearview mirror and stared directly into it. My chest tightened because the mirror was pointed straight at the back seat. And suddenly, the seat cushion slowly sank downward, like something invisible had just sat down. I froze. The driver didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the mirror, watching, waiting. The seat dipped a little deeper. Then the driver's head slowly turned, not toward the road, not toward the mirror, toward me, even through the fog and glare. I recognized the face. Same man, same empty expression, same tired eyes. Daniel Harper, dead for 7 years. He looked straight at me through the glass, and his lips moved, slow, deliberate. I couldn't hear the words through the closed window, but I didn't need to, because I already knew what he was saying. Don't make it look at you. Behind him, the rear seat creaked softly, and for the first time since that night, I had the horrible feeling that whatever had been sitting back there had been riding with him this entire time, still driving, still watching, still waiting for the next person who noticed it. The van was already there when I came around the curve. White, boxy, parked halfway on the gravel shoulder, like someone had pulled over in a hurry and never finished a thought. What bothered me wasn't the van itself. It was the time, 2:17 in the morning, and that stretch of road had a reputation. You learn pretty quickly in patrol which places feel wrong after midnight. Some intersections collect drunk drivers. Some back roads attract people looking to hide things. This one collected accidents. Not the normal kind either. Over the years, there have been enough crashes there that even dispatch started calling it the shoulder. No real reason. Just a quiet nickname people used when they didn't want to explain too much. Cars would drift off the road there, sometimes for no clear reason, sometimes with no skid marks at all. So when I saw that white van sitting in the exact same spot where most of those wrecks happened, I slowed down, My headlights washed over the side of it as I rolled closer. No hazard lights, no movement inside, just a plain cargo van sitting in the dark. I checked the clock on my dash again, 2:17. For some reason, that number stuck in my head. I pulled in behind the van and switched on the red and blue lights. The trees around the road flashed in waves of color. Still no movement. The van didn't start. No door opened. Nothing. Just a quiet tick of my cruiser engine and the low whisper of wind moving to the branches overhead. I sat there for a few seconds watching the rear doors, waiting for the driver to step out. Usually people do something when they see lights behind them. They look back. They adjust in their seat. They show some sign they know you're there. But this van stayed perfectly still. That uneasy feeling crept into my chest again. The same one I get when something doesn't match the situation. I reach for the radio. Dispatch. I'm out with vehicle. Go ahead. White cargo van. County Road 14 near the curb by Miller's Field. There was a pause. Then dispatch answered quietly. Copy. That location again. Something about the way she said it made the silence feel heavier. I opened my door and stepped out. Cold air rolled across the road, the kind that cuts through your uniform and settles into your bones. My boots crunched on the gravel as I walked toward the van. The back doors had no windows, just two plain metal panels and a set of old hinges. The paint was dull, dusty, like the vehicle had been driving long dirt roads. But something else caught my attention. The tires. They were turned slightly toward the road, like the driver had been preparing to pull back out, but never did. I moved along the driver's side slowly, flashlight beams sliding across the body of the van. There were no company logos, no markings, just plain white metal. I reached the driver's window and shined a light inside. A man sat behind the wheel, both hands resting on his lap. He looked about 50, thin face, short gray hair, and he was staring straight ahead at the road. He didn't react to the light, didn't blink, didn't turn his head. I tapped the window gently. Sir, nothing. I tapped again. Sir, you okay in there? The man's chest rose slowly with a breath, but he didn't look at me. For a moment, I wondered if he was asleep, but his eyes were open, wide open, and focused somewhere far out in the darkness ahead. I angled the flashlight toward the passenger seat. Empty, just a folded map sitting on the dashboard. Then I swept the beam toward the back of the van. Cargo area, dark. I couldn't see much through the divider behind the seats, but something about the way the man was sitting felt strange. Too rigid, too careful, like someone trying very hard not to move. Sir, I said again, louder this time, you can roll the window down. His fingers twitched slightly, just a small movement. Then they stopped again. I waited. Finally, very slowly, the man turned his head, not toward me, toward the rear-view mirror. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet, barely louder than the wind outside. Did you walk around the back? The question caught me off guard. What? He swallowed. His eyes stayed fixed on the mirror. Did you go behind the van? I shook my head without thinking. No. His shoulders dropped slightly. A tiny bit of relief. Then he whispered something else. So quiet I almost missed it. Good. A strange chill moved through my chest. Why? The man finally turned his head a little toward me. Not fully. Just enough that I could see the side of his face in the light. There were dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in days. You shouldn't go back there, he said. The words came out dry, careful, like someone choosing each one slowly. I felt a small knot tighten in my stomach. Why not? He stared at the mirror again. His breathing got a little faster. Because if you do, he said softly, it will know. I frowned. Know what? The man didn't answer. Instead, he slowly lifted one hand, pointing at the rearview mirror. You'll see it. A quiet breeze passed through the trees. The branches whispered together in the dark. I shifted slightly and looked toward the back of the van. Just plain metal doors. Closed tight. No movement. Nothing unusual. Still, the way the man spoke made the air feel heavier. Sir, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need you to step out of the vehicle. He shook his head. Slow. Immediate. No, that's not optional. His fingers tightened together. You don't understand. Then explain it. He looked at me fully now, and the fear in his eyes felt real. The kind of fear people get when they've been staring at something too long. It followed me here, he whispered. My stomach sank slightly. Who did? He looked back at the mirror again. His lips trembled. Not who. Then he pointed toward the rear of the van. What? For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The wind moved softly across the empty road. Then something tapped gently inside the van. A dull sound, metal against metal, from the cargo area behind him. My eyes lifted toward the back. The man's breathing sped up instantly. Don't, he whispered. But my flashlight was already moving. The beam slid across the divider behind the seats, toward the dark cargo space. And as the light touched the metal wall behind him, another sound came from the back. Slow, heavy, like something shifting its weight. Inside the van, right behind us. I knew something was wrong the moment I told him to step out of the van. Most people react in one of two ways during a stop. They either get annoyed or they get nervous. This man looked terrified, not of me, of leaving the driver's seat. Sir, I said calmly, keeping my voice steady, I need you to step out of the vehicle. His head shook before I even finished the sentence. No, the answer came out quick, almost desperate. His hands gripped the edge of the seat now instead of resting on his lap. His fingers dug into the fabric, like he was bracing himself against something. You don't understand, he whispered. His eyes kept flicking up to the rear-view mirror, over and over again, like he expected something to appear there. I tried to keep the situation normal. Routine stops calm people down. Structure makes them feel safe. At this point, it's not a request, I said. You need to step outside. His breathing started getting faster. I could see the movement in his shoulders. Then he leaned close to the window and spoke quietly. Please don't make me open that door. Something about the way he said it made the hair on my arms lift slightly. Why? I asked. His eyes moved again to the mirror. You heard it, right? I didn't answer immediately, because I had heard it. That sound in the back. Metal shifting. Something moving in the cargo area. But it could have been anything. Loose equipment. A tool sliding around. Animals sometimes crawl into parked vehicles. If the door's been left open somewhere earlier, there were 100 reasonable explanations. Still, the way the man was acting didn't fit any of them. Sir, I said, keeping my tone measured, is there someone else in the van? His lips parted slightly. Then he slowly shook his head. No, the word barely came out. I shined my flashlight past him again toward the divider behind the seats. The cargo area stayed dark, quiet. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then the van shifted slightly. Not much, just a faint movement in the suspension, like someone had leaned their weight against the back wall. The driver froze instantly. His breathing stopped. I felt my stomach tighten, because I knew what that movement felt like. Anyone who's ever stood next to a parked vehicle can recognize it. That small bounce in the suspension, weight shifting inside. But the driver said he was alone, and the cargo doors were closed. I looked back at him. You told me there was no one else in here. There isn't, he said quickly. His voice sounded strained now, like someone trying to hold something together that was already falling apart. Another soft noise came from the back, this one longer, a slow dragging sound, metal scraping lightly against the van floor. The man's eyes squeezed shut. Oh, God, he whispered. I reached for my shoulder radio. Dispatch. I'm going to need another. The driver suddenly grabbed my sleeve through the open gap in the window. His grip was tight, stronger than I expected. Don't open the back, he said urgently. His voice was shaking now. Whatever you do, don't open those doors. I pulled my arm back gently, then tell me what's back there. He stared at me like he wanted to answer, like the words were right on the edge of coming out. But instead, he just shook his head again. You wouldn't believe me. The wind moved through the trees beside the road. The branches whispered softly overhead. Another dull thud came from the cargo area. He flinched so hard his shoulder hit the door. His eyes snapped back to the mirror. "See," he whispered. My pulse had started picking up now. Slowly, quietly. "See what?" He leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped lower. "It's moving again." I listened carefully. The road around us was silent. No cars. No distant engines. Just the low hum of my cruiser idling behind the van. Then the sound came again. A slow shifting noise, followed by a soft knock from the inside of the cargo doors. 3 slow taps. My throat tightened. The driver started shaking. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't make me step out." "Why?" His eyes met mine now, and the fear in them felt real. The kind that comes from someone who has already seen too much. "Because if I open the door," he said quietly, "it'll come forward." The words hung in the air between us. I looked back toward the rear of the van. Still just plain white metal. Closed tight. No gaps. No movement from the outside. But inside, something shifted again. He sucked in a sharp breath. "You see why I can't move now?" I kept my voice calm. "You're saying something is in the back." He nodded slowly. "Yes." "And it followed you here?" Another slow nod. "How long?" His eyes dropped to the steering wheel. "A while." That wasn't an answer. "How long?" I repeated. His lips moved slightly. "Since the gas station." "Which one?" "The one 20 miles back." His fingers tightened around the seat again. "I stopped there for coffee," he said. "I left the van for maybe 2 minutes." His breathing grew uneven. When I came back, the doors were still closed. He swallowed hard, but the van felt heavier. Another slow tap came from the cargo doors behind him. His eyes squeezed shut again. That's when I heard the first sound. I felt the cold air settle deeper into my uniform. "What sound?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Breathing." My pulse climbed a little faster. "Animal?" He shook his head. "No." "Person?" "No." Another scrape came from the cargo area. Closer this time. The driver stiffened in his seat. "Please," he whispered again. "Don't make me open the door." I took a step back from the window and looked toward the rear of the van. My flashlight beam traced along the side panels, toward the cargo doors. The metal looked perfectly still, but the van suspension dipped again, slightly, like something inside had shifted its position. The driver spoke again quietly. "You're thinking about checking the back, aren't you?" I didn't answer. "Because I was." He shook his head slowly. "That's what the last guy said." My stomach tightened. I looked back at him. "The last guy..." He nodded. A truck driver pulled over when he heard me honking. The driver's voice dropped even lower. He went to the back doors. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "What happened?" The man stared straight ahead at the road again. His eyes looked hollow now. He opened them. I waited, but the driver didn't say anything else. "What happened next?" I asked. His lips trembled, and for a moment he looked like he might start crying. "I don't know," he whispered. The answer surprised me. "You were there." He shook his head slowly. "No." "Why not?" His eyes lifted once more to the rearview mirror, and his voice came out barely above a breath. "Because the moment he opened those doors, the breathing stopped. Silence settled over the road again. Heavy, still. Then something inside the cargo area shifted one more time. And this time, it sounded like it was moving closer to the front of the van. By the time backup arrived, the driver hadn't moved an inch. Not once. He stayed in that seat the entire time, hands gripping the edge of the cushion, like he was afraid the moment he relaxed, something would pull him backward. I kept walking small circles around the van while we waited, partly to stay alert, partly because I didn't like standing still beside it. Every time I got near the back doors, the same feeling crept up my spine, like something inside knew exactly where I was. The driver watched me through the side mirror. Every time my flashlight passed near the cargo doors, his breathing got faster. "Don't go back there," he said quietly at one point. I didn't answer, because I didn't want him hearing the doubt in my voice. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted to find anymore. 10 minutes later, headlights appeared around the bend. Another cruiser. The beams cut through the trees, and washed across the van. Relief came over me faster than I expected. My partner for the night stepped out, adjusting his jacket as he walked over. "What's going on?" he asked. I nodded toward the van. Driver says something's in the cargo area. My partner glanced at the vehicle, then back at me. "Someone." He says no. "What does that mean?" I rubbed the back of my neck. He says it followed him from a gas station. My partner gave me the look every officer gives when a story starts sounding strange. But before he could respond, a slow thud came from inside the van. Not loud, just heavy, like something dropping onto the metal floor. My partner froze. His eyes moved to the back doors. "You hear that?" I nodded slowly. The driver inside the van whispered something. "See." His voice cracked slightly. "I told you." My partner stepped toward the cargo doors. "Probably loose equipment." "Don't," the driver said immediately. The word came out sharp. Panicked, my partner glanced toward him. "Relax." But the driver was shaking now. His head moved back and forth quickly. "No, you don't understand." Another sound came from the cargo area. A dragging noise. Slow, heavy, metal scraping softly across the van floor. The driver squeezed his eyes shut. "It's moving again." My partner frowned. "You transporting animals or something?" "No." "Then what is it?" The driver whispered something so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "I don't know." Silence filled the road for a few seconds. Cold wind rolled across the gravel shoulder. Then my partner reached for the handle on the cargo door. "Let's just open it." The driver lunged forward in his seat. "Don't." But the handle was already turning. The latch clicked, a sharp metallic sound in the quiet night. For a moment, nothing happened. My partner looked at me. Then he slowly pulled the door open. The hinges groaned softly. The door swung outward. My flashlight beam followed the movement automatically, straight into the cargo area. The back of the van was empty, completely empty. Bare metal floor, scuffed walls, a few scratches from old cargo. Nothing else. No boxes, no equipment, no animals, no person hiding in the corner. Just open space. My partner looked back at me. "See." I stepped closer and lifted my flashlight higher. The beam washed across every inch of the interior. Still nothing. The driver leaned sideways in his seat, trying to see past us. His face had gone pale. "What do you see?" "Nothing," my partner said. The word hung in the air. For a moment, relief tried to push into my chest. Maybe it had been loose tools after all. Maybe the guy had just worked himself into a panic. Then something moved. It was small. So small at first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. The metal floor inside the van dipped slightly. Just a little. Like someone had stepped onto it. But no one was there. I felt my chest tighten. My partner didn't notice right away. He was still scanning the corners of the cargo space. "Looks clear to me," he said. Then the floor dipped again, this time deeper. The metal groaned softly, like weight shifting, right in the center of the van. My partner stopped moving. "Did you?" The words died in his throat, because the floor dipped again. Slow, deliberate, like something invisible had taken another step toward the open doors. Cold air poured out of the cargo space suddenly. A strange kind of cold. Not like winter air. Something heavier. My flashlight beam trembled slightly, because the floor was still bending, still reacting to something moving forward. One step, then another. My partner slowly backed away from the doors. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, that's weird." The driver made a choking sound inside the van. His voice came out broken. "Close it." My partner didn't move. He was staring into the empty cargo area, watching the floor, because now the metal near the doorway dipped again, right where someone's foot would land stepping out. But nothing stepped out. Nothing appeared. Just that quiet creak of metal under invisible weight. Then the van suspension bounced slightly, as if something had jumped down onto the road. Both of us stepped back immediately. Gravel crunched under our boots. The night air felt suddenly thicker, heavier. My flashlight swept across the ground beside the van. Nothing there, just dust and gravel. But the ground shifted, a faint crunch, like footsteps. moving away from the van. My partner turned slowly. "You see that?" I nodded, because the gravel kept crunching. Step, 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 but no footprints appeared. No shape, no shadow, just the sound of something walking slowly across the shoulder, heading toward the dark tree line. The driver inside the van started crying quietly. I told you. Neither of us moved. We just listened. The footsteps continued across the gravel, then onto the dirt beyond the road, then into the grass, then into the trees. Branches rustled softly, and then nothing. Silence returned to the road. My partner finally spoke. "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know, but the driver whispered something from inside the van, something that made my stomach drop. His voice trembled as he spoke. "It never leaves." My partner turned toward him. "What?" The driver wiped his face with shaking hands. "It just follows someone else." Neither of us spoke. Cold wind moved through the trees again. My flashlight beam slowly drifted back toward the open cargo space. The van floor had returned to normal. Flat, still, empty. But right before I stepped away, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the metal floor, near the center of the cargo area, a faint mark, like pressure had been pressing there for a long time. The shape wasn't clear, but it looked almost like the outline of someone sitting. And as I stared at it, the metal dipped slightly again. Just once, like something invisible had settled back down. The first thing that didn't make sense was the speed. Not mine, the car I was chasing. It flew past me so fast that for a second I thought I imagined it. One moment the highway ahead of me was empty. The next moment headlights streaked across my windshield and vanished into the darkness behind me. My radar chirped. 93. On a road where the limit was 55. I flipped my lights on without even thinking. Red and blue spilled across the trees lining the highway as I swung the cruiser around and hit the gas. It was my third week on night patrol. Still new enough that every stop felt important. Still trying to prove I belonged there. The engine roared as I pushed the cruiser faster down the empty road. The car ahead of me was already half a mile away. Two small red dots shrinking in the distance. I pressed the radio button. "Dispatch! I've got a vehicle running 90 plus eastbound on County 18. Static crackled softly before the reply came. "Copy that. Can you confirm vehicle type?" "Negative," I said. "Too dark." The road bent slightly through farmland. Tall grass on both sides. No houses. No streetlights. Just my headlights chasing those two tiny taillights ahead. They weren't slowing down. If anything, they were pulling farther away. I pushed the cruiser harder. 70. 80. The engine strained slightly. Then something strange happened. The car ahead suddenly turned. No signal. No brake lights. It just slipped off the highway onto a narrow side road I'd never noticed before. I slowed instinctively and swung after it. Gravel popped under my tires as the cruiser entered the smaller road. Immediately something felt different. The pavement was rougher, narrower. The trees leaned closer to the edge. My headlights bounced across branches and thick brush on both sides. I glanced down at the GPS screen mounted near the dash. The map still showed the main highway. No side road. The arrow that represented my car sat in the middle of an empty green field. I frowned slightly. Maybe the map just hadn't updated. Some rural roads aren't always listed. It happens. The tail lights ahead flickered between the trees. Still moving fast. Still pulling away. I pressed the gas again. The cruiser surged forward. My headlights stretched deeper down the road. But something about the place felt off. The trees were too thick. The road curved more sharply than any county road I'd seen in that area. And the GPS still insisted I wasn't on any road at all. I keyed the radio again. "Dispatch. Suspect turned onto an unmarked road. I'm still in pursuit." Silence. Then static. "Dispatch?" The radio hissed quietly, but no voice answered. I glanced down at it. The signal bar was gone. Just a blank screen. That didn't make sense. We were only a few miles outside town. There was always signal out here. I looked back at the road ahead. The tail lights were still there, but something had changed. They weren't moving away anymore. They were staying the same distance ahead of me, like the driver had slowed down, waiting. The thought made my stomach tighten slightly. I eased my foot off the gas. The cruiser slowed, but the taillights ahead didn't grow closer. They stayed exactly the same distance away, a fixed point in the darkness. The road curved again, this time sharper. My headlights swept across a wooden sign nailed to a tree. The beam caught it just long enough to read the faded paint. Welcome. But there was nothing under it. No town name, no direction, just the word welcome. The road straightened again. The trees opened up slightly. And suddenly houses appeared. Old houses, small ones, set far back from the road. Their windows were dark. No porch lights. No cars in the driveways. Just silent buildings sitting under the pale glow of my headlights. I slowed the cruiser further. Something about the place made my chest feel tight. It looked like a town, but it didn't feel like one. No dogs barking. No porch lights flicking on. No sign that anyone inside those houses even noticed a police cruiser driving past at night. The taillights ahead turned another corner. I followed. My GPS screen still showed nothing but empty land. No roads, no buildings, no town. The arrow representing my cruiser drifted slowly across the blank map like it was floating. I tried the radio again. Dispatch, do you copy? Nothing. Just static. The road narrowed even more now. The houses sat closer to the edge. Some of them looked abandoned. Broken fences. Sagging roofs. I felt the strange urge to turn around, to leave the chase. But the taillights ahead were still there, still leading me deeper, still the same distance away. Like the car knew exactly how far ahead it needed to stay. Then the road opened into a small intersection. For directions, all equally dark. The car ahead rolled through without stopping. Its taillights disappeared briefly behind a row of trees, then came back into view. I followed again. The cruiser rolled slowly through the intersection, and that's when I noticed something strange. There were no road signs. Not one. No stop signs. No street names. Nothing. Just empty wooden posts sticking out of ground, like signs used to be there once. But someone had removed them. I felt quiet unease creeping into my chest. This place shouldn't exist. Not this close to town. I had driven these roads dozens of times during training. I would have remembered a whole neighborhood out here. The car ahead slowed slightly, just enough that I could finally see its shape. A dark sedan, older model. Its windows were black, too dark to see inside. I lifted the radio again. Dispatch! I've lost signal. I'm continuing pursuit. Still nothing. The road curved one last time, and suddenly the sedan stopped, right in the middle of the road. Its brake lights glowed red through the fog that had begun creeping across the ground. My cruiser rolled to a stop about 50 feet behind it, engine idling, lights flashing across the quiet houses around us. For a few seconds, neither car moved. The night felt strangely quiet, too quiet. Then something happened that made the hair on my arms rise. The driver's door of the sedan slowly opened, but no one stepped out. The door just hung there, wide open, swinging slightly in the cold wind. I stared at it for a moment, waiting, but the driver never appeared. The empty door stayed open. The interior of the car remained dark, and that's when I noticed something even stranger. The taillights, they were still glowing, which meant the car was still running. But if the driver had stepped out, where did they go? I stepped out of my cruiser slowly. The gravel crunched under my boots. Cold fog curled around my legs. I moved a little closer to the sedan. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness and into the open driver's door. The seat was empty. The engine hummed softly. No keys in the ignition. No person in the car. Nothing. Just an empty vehicle sitting in the middle of a road that, according to my GPS, didn't exist. The car shouldn't have been empty. I stood there with my flashlight pointed into the driver's seat, waiting for someone to move or breathe or say something. But nothing happened. The engine hummed softly like the car was still alive, even though the person driving it had somehow vanished. Cold fog slid across the road and curled around my boots. I leaned a little closer and swept the flashlight across the inside of the sedan. Empty passenger seat. Empty back seat. No bags. No phone. No wallet sitting in the cup holder. Nothing. Just a faint smell of warm metal and old fabric. The driver's door creaked slowly as the wind pushed it a little wider. For a moment, I wondered if the driver had run into the woods. Maybe they panicked when they saw my lights. Maybe they were hiding nearby. I turned and aimed my flashlight toward the tree line. The beam cut through fog and branches. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No sound of someone running. Just quiet woods. I felt that strange pressure in my chest again, like I had stepped somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. Behind me, my cruiser lights kept flashing red and blue. The colors washed across the empty houses lining the road. That's when I noticed something else. None of the houses had lights on. Not one. Every window was dark. At first, that didn't seem strange. It was late. People sleep. But as I turned slowly, shining the flashlight from house to house, the silence felt wrong. No TV glow. No porch lights. No faint light behind curtains. Just empty windows staring back at the road. I stepped back toward my cruiser and grabbed the radio again. Dispatch! I've got an abandoned vehicle. Driver not on scene. Static answered me. The signal bars were still gone. I frowned and lifted the radio higher, like that might help. Dispatch, do you copy? Nothing. Only a quiet hiss. That was the moment I realized something that made my stomach tighten. I couldn't hear anything else either. No insects. No dogs. No distant traffic from the highway. It was like sound just stopped in this place. I looked back at the sedan. The engine was still running. That was the only noise on the entire street. I reached in and shut it off. The key wasn't in the ignition. That confused me for a second. But the engine died anyway, and suddenly the road went completely silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. I stood there listening, waiting. Then I heard something faint, not close, farther down the street, a door creaking somewhere. I turned my head slowly. My flashlight beam moved across the houses. Most of them looked old, with siding peeling off, mailboxes leaning crooked beside driveways. One house had a swing set in the yard. The chains moved gently back and forth, even though there was no wind. I took a slow step forward. Gravel crunched under my boot. The sound felt too loud, like the whole town could hear it. Another creak echoed somewhere ahead. Maybe a porch, maybe a gate. I followed the sound carefully. The fog hung low across the road. My flashlight beam only cut through a few feet at a time. As I walked farther into the street, something strange became clear. The houses weren't just dark. They were empty. Most of the windows had no curtains, no furniture inside, just bare rooms, like everyone had moved out or disappeared. I stopped near one of the houses and aimed the light to the front window. Dust covered the floor, a thin layer, but something had disturbed it. Lines in the dust, like something heavy had been dragged across the room recently. I stepped back slowly. A cold feeling slid down my spine. Why would someone drag furniture through an abandoned house? Or worse, who was still living here? Behind me, somewhere back down the road, my cruiser lights continued flashing. Red, blue, red, blue. Each flash painted the houses in quick bursts of color. And for a split second during one of those flashes, I thought I saw someone standing in one of the windows across the street. The shape was there only for a moment. Tall, still, watching. My heart jumped hard. I swung the flashlight toward the house immediately. The beam filled the window, but the room inside was empty. Bare walls, dusty floor, no one there. I stayed frozen for a few seconds, listening. Nothing moved. I told myself it had to be my eyes playing tricks. The flashing lights, the fog, my nerves. Still, I didn't like standing there anymore. I turned and started walking back toward my cruiser. But something else caught my attention before I reached it. Farther down the road, another car sat parked on the shoulder. Old pickup truck, dark, its shape barely visible through the fog. I was sure it hadn't been there before. I stared at it for a moment, trying to remember if I had passed it while chasing the sedan. I didn't think so, but maybe I missed it. My flashlight beam stretched down the road toward the truck. The windows were dark, no lights inside. The truck didn't look damaged, just sitting there. I started walking toward it slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. Something deep in my gut told me I shouldn't keep going, but curiosity pulled me forward. Halfway down the road, I noticed something else. The fog was thicker around the truck, almost like smoke. My beam struggled to cut through it. I slowed down. That's when I heard the sound again. A door opening, not from the truck, from one of the houses behind me. Slow, quiet, with scraping against wood. I turned immediately. The flashlight beam swung across the houses. One of the front doors now stood slightly open. I was sure it had been closed before. A dark gap showed between the door and the frame. No light inside, just blackness. I felt the cold creep deeper into my chest. For a moment I just stood there, watching that open doorway, waiting for someone to step out. But no one did. The door didn't move again. It just stayed open. Then, very softly, I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside the house. Slow, dragging steps moving across the floor. I held my breath. The sound stopped near the doorway, like whoever was inside had reached the entrance. But still, no one came out. The silence stretched longer. My cruiser lights flashed again down the road. Red, blue, red, blue. And during one of those flashes, I finally saw something inside the doorway. Not clearly, just a shape, standing in the dark hall, behind the door, watching me, perfectly still. I raised my flashlight and pointed it directly at the doorway. The beam flooded the inside of the house. Dust, bare walls, empty floor. No person standing there. Nothing. But the front door was now open wider than before, and the footsteps inside the house had stopped exactly when I lifted the light. I knew that car was supposed to be empty. I had stood beside it. I had shined my flashlight through every window. There was no one inside. But when I turned away from the open doorway of that house, the engine behind me started. It wasn't loud, just a quiet vibration at first, then the familiar hum of a running motor. I froze in the middle of the road. Slowly, I turned around. The dark sedan I had shut off a minute earlier was running again. Headlights on, brake lights glowing faint red through the fog. For a moment, my brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe I hadn't turned off all the way. Maybe the engine had stalled and restarted. But none of that explained the worst part. The driver's door was closed now. I was certain it had been hanging open before. The wind pushed gently through the street, stirring the fog around my legs. I stared at the car, waiting for someone to step out, waiting for the driver to finally show himself. But the windows stayed dark. No movement inside, just a quiet purr of the engine. I walked toward it slowly. My boots sounded too loud on the gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. Not fear exactly. Something stranger. Like the road itself didn't want me here. I stopped a few feet from the driver's door. My flashlight beam slid across the window. The glass reflected my own face back at me, pale under the red and blue lights of my cruiser. I leaned a little closer, trying to see inside. Still empty. No one behind the wheel. The seatbelt hung loose beside the seat. I reached for the door handle, cold metal under my fingers. For a second I hesitated. Then I pulled it open. The interior light flicked on. Empty driver's seat. Empty passenger seat. No keys. No person. Nothing. The engine kept running. That didn't make sense. My pulse began beating harder in my ears. I stepped back slowly. Something about that car felt wrong now, like it wasn't just a vehicle anymore. I shut the door again. The engine continued humming quietly. For a moment, I thought about getting back into my cruiser and leaving, just driving straight back to the highway. But something stopped me, a shape moving at the far end of the street. I lifted my flashlight. The beam stretched through the fog. Another intersection ahead, and sitting right in the middle of it was the same sedan. I blinked, then looked back at the car beside me. It was still there, still running, still parked where I left it. My stomach tightened. Slowly, I turned my head forward again. The sedan at the intersection hadn't moved. Same dark color, same shape, same dim red taillights. I stood there trying to understand what I was seeing. Two identical cars, one beside me, one farther down the road. Then the one at the intersection started moving. It rolled slowly across the road, turned left, and disappeared behind the houses. I looked back at the sedan next to me again. Still there, still quiet, still empty. My mind raced through possibilities. Another driver, another car that just looked the same. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't true. Something about the way it moved felt too familiar, too exact. I stepped away from the car beside me and began walking toward the intersection. The fog thickened the farther I went. The houses on both sides of the road felt like they were leaning closer now, watching, listening. Every few seconds I glanced back. The original sedan was still parked where I left it, its headlights shining softly down the street. But when I reached the intersection, my heart sank. The sedan was there again, sitting quietly at the next corner. Exactly the same. Same shape, same glow from the taillights, same dark windows. It was facing away from me this time, like it was waiting. I stopped walking. Something inside me whispered that I shouldn't keep following it, that this wasn't a normal chase anymore. But curiosity pushed me forward again. I crossed the intersection slowly. The sedan ahead started moving again the moment I got closer, rolling forward through the fog, turning another corner, always staying just far enough away. Not fast, not slow, just leading. I followed. The road twisted deeper through the silent town. More houses passed on both sides. All dark, all empty. Then the road opened into another intersection. And there was again the same car, parked in the middle of the road, waiting. My chest tightened. I looked behind me. For a second my breath caught. The sedan I had left earlier was gone. The spot where it had been parked was empty now. No headlights, no engine, just fog rolling slowly across the pavement. I turned back toward the intersection. The car ahead sat perfectly still, like it knew I had noticed, like it wanted me to notice. The engine started again. Headlights flickered on. The sedan rolled forward and turned down another street. I didn't move this time. I just watched it disappear. My mind tried to piece things together. How many times had I seen it now? 3? 4? Each time it appeared farther ahead, like it was circling the town, or guiding me somewhere. Then a thought crept into my head that made the back of my neck prickle. What if it wasn't guiding me? What if it was keeping me here? The fog thickened again. For a moment, I couldn't even see my cruiser lights anymore. Just pale flashes of red and blue in the distance. I started walking back toward them, slowly, carefully, but halfway down the road, I stopped again, because the sedan was back, parked right beside my cruiser, exactly where it had been the first time. Engine running, driver's door closed, windows dark, like it had never left. I stood there staring at it. My cruiser lights flashed across the car. Red, blue, red, blue. Each flash made the windows look like black mirrors. And during one of those flashes, I thought I saw something inside. Not clearly, just the shape of someone sitting in the driver's seat, watching me. But when the next flash of light came, the seat was empty again. The engine kept humming quietly, like the car was breathing. And suddenly I understood something that made my chest feel hollow. The car wasn't leading me through the town. It was circling me, showing up again and again, at every corner, at every turn, always ahead of me, always waiting, like it knew exactly where I was going, even before I did. I was driving slower now, each mile stretching like a dream that didn't want to end. Fog rolled in thick, pressing against my windshield, and the headlights barely cut through it. My radio squawked with static, just a low hum and crackle you hear before everything cuts out completely. Unit 12, coming anyone copy? Nothing, just more static, as if the air itself swallowed my words. I hit the button again, harder this time. Dispatch, do you read me? Silence, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your heartbeat feel too loud. I leaned back, eyes scanning the road ahead. The town was quiet, too quiet, I had passed streets lined with houses, each window dark. Not one light, not a flicker. The fog made them look like shadows frozen in place, their shapes twisting as I drove past. I pulled over and stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my boots. The air smelled damp and cold, carrying a faint metallic tang. I swept my flashlight across the street, and nothing moved. No cats scurrying, no signs of life. Just houses, perfectly silent. I tried the radio again. Dispatch, do you read me? Unit 12, over. Static, nothing. I fumbled with my phone. No signal, not even a bar. That was impossible. There were towers just a few miles back. I had been calling in every traffic stop, every strange vehicle, everything, and now, nothing. I felt a chill creep down my spine, and for the first time, I considered turning around. But the road behind me stretched empty, swallowed by fog. There was no road, really, just a winding path through darkness. And the GPS, I had been following it this whole time, kept rerouting me. It led me deeper into this place, a place that couldn't exist. I tried to remember how I got here. The streets didn't match any map I had ever seen. Even the GPS called it something new each time I glanced at the screen. Route recalculated. It wasn't a glitch. The map didn't exist. I checked again. Zero data. Nothing. Just a blinking that's showing my car lost somewhere between reality and the unknown. I pressed onward, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. Every turn felt deliberate, as if the town itself guided me. Houses leaned closer, the fog twisting around their corners. The wind whispered softly through the empty streets, and I thought I heard faint footsteps behind me. I turned, flashlight sweeping the road, and found nothing. My pulse hammered, ears straining for sound. Then I saw it again, a faint shadow moving at the end of the street. I froze, breath caught. My mind tried to reason. Another person? Maybe someone hiding? But no, it was that car. The same sedan I'd seen at every intersection. Headlights off this time, just a dark shape waiting. I realized it had been following me, appearing at points I hadn't noticed until now. Always ahead, always there. I walked cautiously toward it, flashlight trembling in my grip. The air felt heavier with each step. Static from my radio echoed faintly, almost like a whisper from the town itself. The sedan moved forward as I neared, gliding across the street in a way that no human driver could. I stopped, instinct screaming, but my curiosity held me. The street bent sharply, and the car vanished behind the fog. I pressed on, moving quickly now. My boots kicked up gravel, echoing through the silence. Then the headlights appeared again, up ahead, always just far enough that I couldn't catch it, always just close enough that I couldn't ignore it. I tried call dispatch again, desperation in my voice. Dispatch, Unit 12, I can't, nothing. I stopped moving, hands gripping the flashlight tighter. That's when I noticed something. No street signs, no markings, no names on any of the houses. The town was perfect in its emptiness, but impossible in its existence. I turned in a slow circle, trying to orient myself, and realized I hadn't seen any signs of life at all. Not a dog, not a mailbox swinging in the wind, not even a single car parked in the driveway. I reached for my radio one last time. Dispatch, please respond. I'm at... Static swallowed words. I slammed the button down. My reflection in the window of a nearby house stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed. Then I saw it in the corner of the glass. A movement behind me. Slow, deliberate. I spun around. Nothing, just the fog. The sedan appeared again, idling in the middle of the street. Engine silent now. Windows dark. But I felt it, watching me, waiting. I swallowed hard, adrenaline mixing with dread. I realized I was completely alone, completely cut off. In this town, this shouldn't exist. I glanced at my GPS, hoping for some guidance. The screen blinked, a dot in the middle of nowhere. Route recalculated. No roads, no highways, nothing familiar. Just a tiny blinking that showing me trapped in a place that had never been there before. I stepped back, heart racing. Tried to tell myself it was a dream, a trick of fatigue, the long hours of night patrol. chasing cars in empty country roads. But it didn't feel like that. It felt deliberate. The town was alive in its emptiness, watching me, testing me. And that car, whatever it was, it wasn't just a vehicle. It was the first warning. I thought about turning around, leaving this place behind. But every turn I made, every street I tried, led me deeper. And the sedan appeared again. Always ahead, always in sight, always silent. And I realized in the pit of my stomach that this town wasn't meant to let me leave. And the radio, dead. The world outside, gone. Only the fog, the empty streets, and that car, waiting. I swallowed, took a deep breath, and moved forward anyway, because somehow I had no choice. The town had me, and I didn't yet know what it wanted, but I would find out. And whatever it wasn't done with me. I pulled up behind the car, my headlights cut into the fog like knives, and my radio buzzed with the usual night chatter. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the car in front of me, a dark sedan, its engine ticking softly in the cold, and the driver wouldn't move. Window up, head bowed. I tapped my siren lightly, nothing more than a warning, and waited. Seconds stretched. My breath fogged patrol window as I leaned closer, trying to see inside. But the tint was thick like smoke. The driver didn't flinch, didn't look, just sat there silent. My hand hovered over the door handle, instincts buzzing. Something about this felt off. My gut tightened and the hairs on my neck stood up. I called it in. Unit 5, traffic stop. Sedan, one occupant. Window up. No response yet. Static crackled in reply, calm. Copy, Unit 5. Proceed with caution. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the night pressing down. I circled my car, flashlight in hand. The beam cutting across the hood and hitting the windshield. No movement. No sound except the soft ticking of the engine. My heartbeat thumped so loud, I thought it might echo down the empty road. Step out of the car, please. I called, voice firm. Nothing. I noticed something strange. The reflection in the side mirror. It wasn't me alone. There was a figure, faint and blurred behind the driver's seat. My stomach sank. The driver's seat stayed empty, head down, but the shadow in the back shifted slightly as I moved closer. I crouched, flashlight low. My own reflection in the glass stared back at me, and then the window moved a fraction. Not down, not up, just shifted like a slow breath. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. Show me your face, I said again, softer this time, almost hoping for an answer. The car stayed still. A light flickered inside the sedan, not the interior dome. Something deeper, behind the tint, glinting in the corner of my vision. I stepped back, and the reflection disappeared. But the shadow in the back seat, it hadn't. It moved just enough that I couldn't ignore it. I called it in again. Dispatch, the back seat. I think. The radio buzzed violently and cut out. Dead. No static, just silence. My pulse raced. I tried the window again. Locked. My flashlight swept the car. Engine still ticking. But I could see movement. Faint, fluid, almost human, yet wrong. I stepped closer. The fog hung low, curling around the tires. I caught a glimpse of something pressed against the rear glass. No features, just form. It moved when I moved, sliding sideways like water. My hands went cold. I reached for the door again, and then the window rolled up slowly. I jumped back. My own breath came fast, harsh in the quiet night. The car engine stuttered once, then went silent. No shadow, no movement inside, just a dark, still interior. I radioed dispatch again. Dead. No signal. Phone 2. The road behind me stretched empty. No signs of life. No houses, no lights, nothing. My flashlight shook in my grip. I took a cautious step closer to the driver's door. A hand pressed lightly against the glass from inside. No features, just a faint outline of fingers. I froze, heart in my throat. The hand stayed there, and then it was gone. I circled back to the front. The engine was cold now, empty. I hit the door handle. Locked. I stepped back, my mind racing. Was it the driver? Or something else? My training screamed at me. but something deeper, fear, instinct, told me to run. I took out my flashlight, swinging it across the sedan. Nothing moved. The shadow had disappeared, but the air felt thick, like the night itself was pressing against me, waiting. My heartbeat echoed in the silence. I tapped the window lightly. "If you're in there, show yourself." My voice sounded small. A whisper answered, not through the radio, not through glass, but somewhere inside my head. I froze, blinking. The whisper repeated, faint, almost like breathing. Not words, just presence. I stepped back, eyes wide. The car stayed still. The street was empty, fog curling around the tires. I realized then, I didn't know if the driver had been real at all. The shadow, the hand, the whispers, it didn't match anything I'd ever seen. I radioed again, desperation creeping in. Nothing. Static. Dead. The road stretched on, fog swallowing the edges. I realized I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not without knowing what had been in that car. I took a deep breath. Flashlight sweeping the sedan again. The interior was empty. Engine cold. Windows locked. But in the corner of my eye, the shadow moved again, faint, fluid. Watching. Waiting. I swallowed. Heart pounding. I knew I had to act. Had to see. And yet, part of me, every instinct, screamed to run. But I didn't. I reached for the driver's door again, and the shadow shifted closer. And that's when I understood. Whatever was in that car wasn't going to let me leave until I faced it. And I wasn't ready. I pulled forward slowly, trying to keep my nerves under control. But my eyes kept darting to the side mirror. The reflection stared back at me, twisted and warped by the glass. But something wasn't right. I leaned closer, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached, my breath fogging patrol car window. At first, I thought it was just the angle, shadows playing tricks, maybe the fog outside. But then the eyes caught me, too large, too dark, hollow almost, but still watching. I froze, heartbeat thudding in my ears. The driver's face in the mirror shifted, not like a person turning, more like water rippling. My stomach dropped. I blinked, thinking I'd imagined it. But when I looked again, the mouth opened wide, wider than it could possibly stretch, and then closed, slow and deliberate. I tried call dispatch, voice tight, fingers fumbling. Unit 5, aye, static, dead, phone dead, radio dead. Nothing but my own ragged breathing. I pressed the siren button. Nothing, no sound, just the reflection. I swallowed hard. The mirror caught more than the driver's face. Shadows moved behind it, shifting too fast to be anything human. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, trying to tell myself it was a trick, fog, exhaustion, stress. But the mirror never lied. I edged the car forward, slowly, carefully. The reflection followed. Every movement of mine matched, but it wasn't mimicking. It led. There was a pulse in its form, a slow, cruel rhythm, and my stomach churned with it. I tried a flashlight. Beam cut across the car, hitting the side mirror. The face flinched, not from the light, but as if aware, alive, sensing. My hands shook. My legs felt frozen. I wanted to run, but the road behind was swallowed in fog. No houses, no lights, nothing but black. I realized the reflection wasn't just in the mirror. It was everywhere I looked. In the dashboard, flickering in the window glass, stretching across the fog in front of me. I could feel it pressing in, reaching through the night, pressing against my skin without touching. I called the driver's name. My voice cracked. Silence. Then a sound. A soft exhale like wind or someone breathing behind me. I dared not look back. I couldn't. The face in the mirror twisted again, eyes hollow, mouth opening wider, showing nothing I recognized. And then it smiled, slow, deliberate, impossibly wide. My stomach dropped. A cold sweat coated my neck and back. I tried to roll down my own window, to escape, to make contact, anything. Locked like the driver's window had been. My hands pounded, a desperate rhythm against the wheel. The reflection shifted closer, filling the mirror, the entire glass. I realized then that it wasn't just a face. It was empty space pretending to be one, a void that knew I was looking, waiting, hungry for acknowledgement. I pressed the siren again. Nothing. Radio. Nothing. My own flashlight. Flickering. The car was alive with shadows. Shapes dancing just beyond comprehension. I could hear whispers in the fog, soft, pressing, indistinct, crawling under my skin. I forced myself to look again. The eyes. They weren't human. They never had been. Black pools, unblinking, infinite. I tried to look away. Couldn't. The reflection held me, pulling, drawing. My hands went limp on the wheel. Then, in the mirror, I saw the driver's hands. Thin, elongated, resting on the wheel, human enough to deceive, but the fingers bent wrong. Too many joints, moving subtly on their own, twitching. My stomach sank. I wanted to scream, but nothing came. I reached slowly for my flashlight, shaking, desperate. Light hit the mirror. The face recoiled, not in fear, but delight. I realized it was aware of me, enjoying the terror to feed, and a wave of panic overtook me. The reflection in the mirror began to shift, elongating, stretching backward into darkness I couldn't see. It wasn't just a driver, not just a face. It was more, something older, patient, and utterly wrong. I felt my sanity teeter, each heartbeat a hammer on fragile glass. I hit the radio, desperate, pleading, static, nothing. The road behind disappeared entirely, swallowed in fog. I was alone, and yet I wasn't. The mirror reflected not just the car, but the night beyond, twisted, warped. Shadows moved in impossible patterns, impossibly fast, then froze when I tried to focus. I realized I'd know if this was real. The fog, the darkness, the reflection, were they real? Or was my mind bending under whatever was in that car? I blinked. The face grinned again. Wide, impossible, endless. I tried to think. Training. Procedures. Step back. Evaluate. But evaluation faltered under the weight of the eyes. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the reflection that held me. And then a subtle change. The face receded just slightly. The void thinning. But something else appeared. A faint outline of a second face in the mirror, smaller. Behind the first, watching. My pulse thundered. My chest constricted. I realized with a cold clarity that I was seeing layers. Not just a driver. Not just a face. But something deeper, moving behind the mask. I wasn't just in a traffic stop. I was in its gaze. And I had no escape. The mirror trembled as if breathing. The shadows in the car stretched, filling every corner of my vision. I wanted to look away. I wanted to scream. I wanted the world to make sense again. But I couldn't. I reached slowly for the door handle, knowing it wouldn't open, knowing that the reflection would follow me no matter what. The face grinned wider. The second face behind it shifted slightly. Alive, patient, waiting. And I understood then. Whatever was in the driver's seat, whatever had been in the car all along, had been waiting for me to see, waiting for me to acknowledge it. I swallowed hard, tried to force my mind to reason. But the mirror, it had already claimed something for me. Something I couldn't name. Something I would feel long after this night ended. And as I sat there, trapped in the car with the impossibly empty, impossibly aware reflection, I realized I hadn't seen everything yet. I hadn't seen what it really wanted. I caught the car just as it rounded the last bend before the drop-off. Headlights cut weakly through the fog, bouncing off slick asphalt, painting the highway in shaky streaks of white. My pulse sped as I flipped the siren. A brief wail lost in the night. The car slowed but didn't stop, sliding almost lazily toward the shoulder. The air smelled like rain and oil, and something else, faint, almost rotten. I gripped the wheel tighter. The passenger window, down just enough to hear the tires on the asphalt, revealed nothing but dark shapes, silhouettes against dim dashboard light. I eased closer, hand hovering near the door, heart hammering. I had expected the hitchhiker, someone young, scared, maybe cold. But the seat beside the driver was empty, completely empty. Evening, I said, voice steady till the fog made it sound thin and hollow. No response. The driver's hands were steady on the wheel, but I couldn't see a face. Not clearly. The rear view reflected nothing but darkness. I gestured for them to roll down the window. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. My flashlight swept the interior. Empty. Silent. And then I saw it. Small movements in the back seat. Faint. Almost imperceptible. I leaned closer. My own reflection in the window merging with what was inside. I tapped on the glass. No reaction. The car seemed heavier, slower, as if it knew I was studying it. The fog thickened around the highway, swallowing the white lines. The hum of my engine seemed loud, intrusive. I swallowed, forcing a calm I didn't feel. I tried the radio. Dispatch answered weakly. Unit 7U. Static swallowed my words. I pressed the microphone again. The voice came back, faint, garbled. You see the vehicle? Yes. Yes, I see it. Pulling over. I replied, but my stomach twisted. The car wasn't just parked yet. It sat like it belonged to the fog itself, sliding a little as if testing me. I took a step back and reached for the door handle, realizing the driver's silhouette shifted slightly, unnaturally, not a person, but a shape pretending to be one. I circled my car slowly, flashlight sweeping. The back seat stayed still, and yet I felt it, eyes on me, unblinking, patient. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I was trained to investigate, to protect. My hands shook, not from cold, but from knowing the calm of the highway was a lie. I tried to open the driver's door. Locked. My keys jingled against the handle, my own breathing loud in the night. I crouched slightly, peering into the cracked window. Shadows moved, patterns impossible to trace, like smoke curled by an unseen hand. I couldn't make sense of it. I took a step back, eyes fixed on the passenger side. Nothing moved. My chest tightened. The fog curled around the car, like fingers pressing in. I could hear a faint hum, low, resonant, as if the engine itself were vibrating to an unfamiliar rhythm. I tried the radio again. Unit 7? Dispatcher's voice came and went, static slicing the words. Car? Highway. The words trailed off, like the signal was fading in the night. I realized with a cold jolt, they couldn't see me. A movement, subtle, in the rear view mirror. The hitchhiker, except it wasn't a person, just a shape, pale and elongated, sliding between shadows. It leaned slightly toward the driver, as if communicating, waiting. My hands froze. I couldn't look away. The driver's silhouette shifted. The head turned. Slow, deliberate, mechanical in its motion. No features, no eyes, nothing human. And yet to awareness. It sensed me. I felt it. The weight of it pressing into the fog. Into me, into the very air of the highway. I took a careful step back. The car didn't move, didn't accelerate, didn't run. It just waited. The fog grew thicker, and in that mist I thought I saw shapes outside the car, figures crouching, dissolving, like the fog itself had become sentient. I swallowed hard. Adrenaline cut to my fear, but reason struggled. Training said call backup, call dispatch, maintain distance. But my eyes kept returning to the rear view, to the back seat. The shape was moving now, more distinct. Not walking, floating. I could see the outline of a face. Too smooth, too pale, eyes hollow and wide. I forced myself to breathe. Slowly. The car was silent, aside from its engine, low and steady. Yet every instinct screamed the air was wrong. Time stretched. My pulse thudded in rhythm with some unseen presence, slow, deliberate, and patient. I tried opening the passenger door, hoping to get a look inside. Locked. I circled, flashlight cutting through the fog. And then I noticed the rear view mirror again. Reflection perfect, except the driver's face wasn't there. Not fully. Only an empty void where eyes should have been. A shadow of a mouth. I stumbled back, heart racing. My flashlight beam caught the back seat again. The shape, pale and elongated. Leaned closer to the driver. Its movements were impossible. Twisting, stretching. The sense of awareness, of deliberate observation, pressed down on me. I pressed the radio one last time. Dispatch didn't answer. The fog seemed to thicken with every unanswered word. I realized then I wasn't alone. but nothing else was visible. Not the fog, not the highway, not the figures I thought I saw. Only the car and whatever it carried. I stepped back into my vehicle, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed run. Yet I knew that leaving would mean nothing. The car waited, patient. And the shapes, they were waiting with it, aware of me, watching me, knowing I was trapped by curiosity, by duty, by fear. I gripped the wheel, shaking. The road behind was swallowed entirely in mist. The headlights of the car I had stopped gleamed faintly, like a predator's eyes, and I realized something worse than fear. This wasn't just a car. This was a space, a container, a presence, a thing aware of me, and it had chosen this night, this lonely highway, for me to see it, and I couldn't look away. The fog hung thick over the asphalt, swallowing the lines of the highway like ink bleeding into water. I stepped back from the car, flashlight scanning, and every instinct in me screamed that something wasn't right. The driver's head tilted slightly, silent, still, watching. I forced a slow breath and told myself I was being careful, just by the book. But then I realized I wasn't alone. The passenger, the hitchhiker I'd seen moments ago, sitting stiffly in the back seat. I blinked. The reflection in the side window confirmed it. A pale, hunched figure, face hidden, eyes too dark to read. My fingers twitched toward my radio. But even before I spoke, the shape seemed to vanish. Just gone. I froze, heart hammering, and circled my cruiser, trying to steady my hands. The fog made everything surreal, a dream stretched too thin. No footprints in the gravel. No shadow lingering behind the car. Nothing. Just a sough from the engine and my own ragged breathing. The car remained, driver impassive, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I leaned closer to the back seat, flashlight slicing through the darkness. Empty. Every corner, every fold of the seat, even under the dash. I saw nothing. My mind raced. How could the passenger disappear in seconds, leaving no trace? I reached for the door handle, fingers brushing cold metal. Locked. My pulse spiked. The driver's head turned fractionally, almost imperceptibly, and the air shifted around the vehicle. The fog curled, pressing closer, swallowing the faint glow of my flashlight. I could feel it watching me, the stillness heavier than any human presence. I fumbled with my radio. Dispatch, I need a plate check. Vehicles. Static cut the words off, leaving only hissing emptiness. My eyes darted back to the rear view. Empty, but then a flicker, a shape, a shadow of a figure, glimpsed in the corner of my vision, gone when I turned. I swallowed, forcing a shaky laugh, convincing myself I'd imagined it. But when I peered back at the van, the back seat gleamed with something too pale to be light, too sharp to be cloth. My skin crawled as a fog thickened, filling the space between us, between reality and what I couldn't explain. Step by step, I edged back to my cruiser. The car didn't move. The driver didn't move. But something in that stillness pressed on me, a presence not bound by seatbelts or doors. My flashlight flickered, brief shadows dancing across the interior. Was it the hitchhiker or something else wearing its shape? The rear view mirror reflected the empty seat. Nothing human. And yet, awareness lingered. I could feel it, an intelligence patient, observing, waiting. My hands tightened on the door, cold sweat running down my back. I should call it in. I should run. But curiosity rooted me, tethered me to the asphalt like some cruel trap. I stepped closer to the van again, flashlight scanning for even the faintest trace. The passenger, gone. My eyes traced the outlines of the seats, the fold and the fabric, the shadows that belonged to nothing. My chest tightened, heart pounding in my ears. How could someone disappear without leaving a mark, without a sound? Then a faint shift behind me, gravel crunching softly, a subtle slide that didn't belong to my steps. I whipped around. Empty road, fog curling like smoke. And in the corner of my vision, I saw it, a flicker of movement inside the van, fleeting, almost teasing. I froze, breath shallow. The driver's silhouette didn't twitch. The engine hummed steadily, but the space around it pulsed, alive with expectation. I realized then, the hitchhiker wasn't gone. It was hiding, but not in the way a person hides. It was part of the air, the fog, the very space of the van, slipping between dimensions I couldn't name. I reached again for the door. Locked. My flashlight flickered. I leaned in, heart racing. The seat was empty, but I knew better. My instinct screamed. It was there, watching, waiting. The absence had weight, a tangible pressure pressing on my chest, tightening with each second. Static on the radio hissed. Unit? The voice warped, slow, distant, almost mocking. I gritted my teeth, voice shaking. I need a plate check. Location visibility, fog, vehicle, more static. Then silence. The van remained dark, impassive, driver calm as a stone. I circled, flashlight slicing to mist, eyes scanning every shadow. Nothing, no footprints, no movement. And yet, I could feel it. The hitchhiker wasn't human. It had learned to disappear, to slip into the space between perception and reality, leaving only dread behind. I stepped back to the cruiser, taking deep breaths, trying to steady my racing thoughts. The van sat there waiting, and I realized something worse than fear. I didn't know what it wanted. The road behind me was swallowed in fog. The radio was dead. I was alone. I glanced one last time at the van. The back seat gleamed faintly, like a thin layer of mist caught in the light. And then I noticed a small detail, something almost imperceptible. The seatbelt twisted unnaturally, as if something had leaned against it a moment ago. I shivered, gripping the wheel. The hitchhiker had vanished again, but the memory of its presence, the weight of it, lingered like a shadow on my chest. I couldn't leave. I couldn't approach. And I knew, deep down, that this night was far from over, because whatever had ridden in that back seat wasn't done with me. It was patient, silent, and it had learned how to disappear, and how to make me see its absence. I thought I had seen enough to make me stop noticing strange things. I was wrong. Hours had passed. The sky had turned the pale gray of early morning. The road slick with the remnants of a night rain. I kept expecting the stretch of highway to open up into familiar markers, fences, or signs pointing back to somewhere real. Instead, the darkness of the road seemed endless, swallowed by fog that had no origin. And then I saw him. He was standing there, exactly where I had picked him up before, not a step forward or back, just frozen in that same posture, thumb extended, face hidden beneath the hood. My chest tightened before I even hit the brakes. My mind flinched. No one should be standing there again. No one should reappear like this. My hands trembled slightly on the wheel. I told myself it was a trick of the fog. Shadows play with your mind when you're alone, but the air around him felt heavier, charged, as if the road itself was waiting. I slowed the car, more out of fear than caution. The tires whispered against wet asphalt. He didn't move. I wanted to scream, to stop, to look away, but my instincts rooted me to the wheel. A voice in the back of my head whispered the impossible. He shouldn't be there. I checked the rear-view mirror and nearly jumped. Nothing reflected him. Not the hood, not the boots, not the outline of the body I had memorized. But outside the windshield, perfectly still, he waited. I tried to tell myself to keep driving. Keep your distance. Pretend it's just some prank. But the world felt wrong. Trees bent in ways they shouldn't. Fog curled like smoke from an unseen fire, and every shadow stretched toward the road like hands. I could feel the tension under my skin, a shiver running along my spine. The radio crackled, not with static, but with whispers. I turned it off, convinced I was losing grip on reality. My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles whitening. I stopped just a few feet from him, and for the first time, he moved. Not toward me, not away, just a slow tilt of the head, as if studying me. I realized, too late, that I didn't know if I wanted him to speak or stay silent. I opened my mouth to call out, but no sound came. My voice seemed trapped somewhere in my chest, strangled by disbelief. The world outside the windshield blurred, fog thickening, then retreating as if breathing. I tried to check the van, the hitchhiker's reflection from hours before, hoping for some anchor. Nothing. Empty. My heart hammered. I backed up, telling myself it was a mistake. Maybe I had looped the highway, without realizing. Maybe he had never been there, but my headlights caught him again, frozen in the same stance. It was a mocking certainty. He shouldn't exist here. And yet he did. I reached for the door. My fingers grazed the handle, and I hesitated. Something felt wrong about the way the fog clung to the asphalt, how the world seemed hollow behind him. The road beyond him rippled, not like asphalt, but like water frozen in time. My eyes followed every detail. The wet grass pressed flat under non-existent wind, the trees leaning inward, the sky a blank slate with no stars. I realized the moment I leaned too close. I couldn't tell where the road ended and the illusion began. I stepped out of the car. Concrete cracked under my boots. Every instinct screamed to run, to drive, but I couldn't. The air was colder than it should have been. Each breath came in a mist that wasn't mine, curling around me, choking me with its presence. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge me in any human way. I wanted to turn back to the car, but my eyes kept returning. And then I saw it, a shape behind him. It moved, not like a person, not like an animal, but something sliding, almost liquid, shifting with intent. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, convinced they were playing tricks, but the figure remained. It was darker than the fog, absorbing light, yet shaping itself like it belonged to the world. My mind screamed, leave, but I couldn't. I was trapped by curiosity, by the terrible need to know what was happening. I took another step. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, small cracks forming, letting out a hiss of air, like the road itself was breathing. My foot faltered, then slammed down. I looked up. The hitchhiker tilted his head, a slow, deliberate motion, and I realized I had never seen his face. Not truly. Hours ago, he had smiled under the streetlight. Or had I imagined that? Now there was nothing but the hollow dark behind the hood. And yet I felt eyes, billions of eyes, watching through that empty space. The figure behind him shifted closer, and I felt its intent. Not malevolent, not kind, just knowing. It knew I had seen it. It had waited for me to notice. And the hitchhiker remained still, unmoving, a sentinel, a signal. I wanted to speak. I wanted to demand answers. But my voice, that fragile human connection to the world, had abandoned me. I ran. My legs carried me back to the car, fumbling with keys, slamming the door, locking it as if that could keep the impossible out. Headlights pierced the fog. The hitchhiker didn't move. The shadowy shape behind him paused. And then, just as I started the engine, it vanished. My windshield reflected only me, only the wet road, only the trembling of my hands on the wheel. I drove, fast, tires spray hissed, engine screaming, heart hammering, every instinct screaming that the road itself was no longer safe. But I kept seeing him. At every intersection, at every curve, he appeared, not walking, not running, just waiting some extended, hood up, face unseen. I tried to swerve, to abandon the road, to escape this cycle, but the road bent with him, always bringing him back into view. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt like it had stopped. My radio remained dead, a silence that pressed him like smoke. I wanted to call dispatch, to speak to someone real, someone anchored in reality. But the world beyond my car had stopped answering. It was just him, the empty road, and the fog that clung like a living thing. Every time I blinked, he seemed closer. Every time I dared look away, I knew he would return. I tried to convince myself it was a loop, a trick, perhaps a glitch in my memory, my perception. But then the hitchhiker lifted a hand, not waving, not beckoning, just a slow rise of a finger pointing. I didn't want to follow it, but my body moved anyway, drawn to whatever impossible place he was signaling. The road ahead warped, the fog thickened, and I realized that I wasn't in control anymore, that this wasn't a road for driving, but a road for being seen. I stopped the car, finally, trapped in a stretch of highway that felt unending. The hitchhiker stepped forward, or maybe I moved backward. It was impossible to tell. The shadowy shape reappeared behind him, sliding closer, stretching, merging with the fog. I thought I saw his face then, just for a second, but I couldn't process it. Not human, not alive, not dead. Something else entirely. Something that shouldn't exist on any road I had ever known. I thought about running, but the tires refused. Or maybe it was me refusing. The world had become a test I couldn't win. I was alone and yet not. The hitchhiker was patient, the shadow waiting, the fog holding its breath. I wanted to call for help. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. And that's when I realized it wasn't about escape. It never had been. Hours, maybe days, I don't know. Every intersection, every bend, he was there. The same hitchhiker, the same impossible presence. The fog whispered. The road shifted. My mind frayed. And yet somewhere deep down, I felt a terrible clarity. This was no accident. This was no trick of the light or my imagination. He was waiting for something. For me. And every instinct told me I was next in line. I keep driving. I keep seeing him. And I know that somewhere ahead, there's a point where I will have to confront the impossible or lose myself entirely to the silence that follows him. The road stretches on. I see headlights in the fog again. He stands there, thumb raised, hood up, waiting. And I keep moving forward because stopping would mean knowing too soon what waits behind that hood. And I'm not ready. Not yet. I saw him before he saw me. Hands gripping the steering wheel so tight the knuckles were white. Eyes darting between the lane and the rear view mirror as if he expected someone to peer out of thin air. My pulse picked up. There's a way fear shows itself. And this driver wore like armor. I flicked the lights and pulled the cruiser behind him. Engine humming. Tires wet from the rain earlier. He jerked, nearly swerving, and I felt that first flicker of unease crawl along my spine. Something about him was wrong. I stepped out, boots hitting asphalt with a thud that sounded too loud. Rain had left the road slick, reflecting the neon from the sign of the closed gas station ahead. The hum of the engine was swallowed by the silence of the night, thick, expectant, like the air itself was holding its breath. I approached, badge in hand, voice firm but calm. "Evening, sir. Do you know why I pulled you over?" He shook his head, small, quick movements. His eyes flicked to the passenger seat, the back seat, then to me again, as if searching for someone or something. His hands trembled. The radio in his car played nothing but static, crackling low, indistinct. I noticed a subtle odor first, metallic, like blood mixed with exhaust. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe a cut, maybe nerves, but my gut told me there was more. I gestured toward the trunk, license, registration, and step out for a moment. I need to check the back. His eyes widened, almost panicked. No, I can't." His voice was tight, shallow, like air trapped in his chest. I stepped closer, hand on my holster, trying to read him, try to understand why the warning bells in my mind screamed louder than any danger I'd encountered before. The trunk was locked. Of course it was. His fingers trembled over the wheel, and I could see the sweat glinting on his forehead under the streetlight. "Step out of the car," I said, voice low, steady. Every instinct screamed that something was off, something not quite right, but human fear, raw, naked fear, was spilling from him in waves. I tried to tell myself it was just a nervous driver, a small-town kid with something to hide. Then I noticed it. The rear-view mirror wasn't just reflecting me. It caught a glimpse of something behind him, a shadow moving too quick for the natural world, curling around the trunk. I blinked. Nothing. Just him, shaking, refusing to meet my gaze. I shook it off. My mind was playing tricks. I needed facts. License, registration, trunk. Simple. "Sir, step out now." My voice cut sharper. His hands twitched. His foot pressed the brake hard enough to leave the tires humming against the wet asphalt. I watched him, noting every flicker of movement, every hesitation. Then, almost imperceptibly, the air around him seemed to press in, like the fog itself was alive, curling closer, carrying a whisper I couldn't place. I shook my head. I had to stay grounded. This was a traffic stop. I circled the car, careful, boots slapping the pavement. Each step felt heavier, the light from my flashlight bouncing in the wet asphalt like a pulse. I tapped the trunk. "Open it, sir." Nothing. The locks were firm. My fingers itched to force it, but something subtle, instinctive, told me not to. Something behind him, maybe even inside the car, watched every move. I felt the first real tremor of fear in my own chest, an echo of his panic. He finally spoke, words barely audible over the hum of the cruiser. I can't, please. His voice cracked, and the tremor in his body doubled. I saw his reflection in the side mirror. Fingers pressed against the glass like he could hold himself away from something. Something real. I realized then that his fear wasn't about me. It wasn't about the law. It was something else. Something waiting. I tried to calm the situation. Sir, whatever's in there, you're only making it worse. Step out, hands visible. His eyes darted the back seat, the space behind him, as if expecting a figure to rise from the shadows. The air felt heavier. Even the streetlights seemed dimmer, distant, reluctant to illuminate what lurked just out of reach. I felt the hairs on my arms stiffen. My gut had never been wrong before. Not like this. He shook his head violently, whispering, "No, no, you don't understand." The tremor ran through him like electricity. I felt a jolt in my own chest, as if the tension was contagious. I realized then he wasn't just scared. He was trying to protect himself from something I couldn't see. Something in that trunk. I crouched slightly, careful, observing. The air around the vehicle had an unnatural stillness, a quiet that pressed against my ears, leaving only the sound of his shallow breathing. I reached for my radio. Dispatch, 10 to 8 traffic stop, requesting. Nothing. The radio crackled, then cut out completely. Static, endless, unresponsive. My stomach dropped. Communication vanished. And the street around us wasn't just empty. It felt erased. No gas station attendant. No lights in the buildings. No sign of the world beyond this asphalt stretch. Just me, the trembling driver, and something waiting. I exhaled slowly, forcing my muscles to unclench. "Sir, listen, I can help, but you have to cooperate." He swallowed, eyes wide, darting the mirror, to the street behind us, to the shadows pressed against the curb. He opened his mouth, and I leaned closer, ready to hear a lie, a confession, anything human. The words never came. Instead, the car trembled slightly, just a whisper of motion. The locks on the trunk clicked on their own. He froze, terror painted across his face, and I felt it too, like the road itself was watching, bending toward us. The shadows shifted, the fog curled, and in that moment, I understood this wasn't a simple traffic stop. This wasn't a driver refusing to comply. This was something alive, something patient. I stepped back, heart hammering, eyes scanning. There, just for a second, I thought I saw a shape crouched in the trunk, stretching its fingers toward the night. I blinked. Gone. The driver was shaking harder now, body trembling uncontrollably. His voice, finally, barely above a whisper, "Please don't let out." My hands tightened on my holster. My mind raced. What is it? What waits in a locked trunk on a quiet, empty highway? I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I wanted to open the trunk, to see, to confirm reality. But a voice in my gut screamed against it. Not yet. Not until I understood. He glanced at me, eyes wide, pleading. The fear radiating from him was contagious. It wasn't the shaking of a nervous man worried about a ticket. It was survival, pure primal. The road behind him seemed to stretch, dark and endless, like a tunnel with no exit. And through that darkness, I felt something watching, waiting for the right moment to move. I took a careful step back. "Stay calm," I whispered. "I need you to calm down." His gaze never left the mirror, the street behind us, the unseen presence. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, to retreat, but my training, my need to understand, kept me rooted. I couldn't leave him here alone, not with whatever waited. Then a sound, metal scraping lightly against metal. Not the car, not the road. Something else. My head snapped toward the trunk. The locks rattled again, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat. I realized I couldn't see the hitchhiker's hands. They were pressed together, almost in prayer. But the trunk lid shifted, subtly, impossibly. My pulse raced. I should have screamed. I should have run. But I couldn't. The night hung on that moment. The driver trembling, the locks rattling, the fog thickening, swallowing the streetlight. and me, frozen in disbelief, understanding finally that this wasn't about traffic laws or tickets. This was about what waited in that trunk. Something patient, something intelligent, something that had been waiting for us both. That I exhaled slowly, trying to anchor myself. This was a stop, a routine stop. I could manage this. I had to. But even as I moved, I felt it, the awareness, not in my eyes, not in my ears, but in my bones. Whatever was in that trunk wasn't just waiting. It was aware of me, and it was learning. I stepped closer, hand trembling, flashlight angled just right to pierce the shadows without revealing too much. The driver's face was pale, sweat glinting. "Please," he whispered again. "Don't." The word caught, almost choked. He knew something I didn't, something I wasn't ready to know. And then the first small detail revealed itself. A shape in the corner of the trunk, moving ever so slightly. Too quick for the eye, too unnatural for the human mind. I froze, and the world fell silent. The rain had stopped, but the asphalt still gleamed like glass under the dim streetlights. I stood by my cruiser, flashlight sweeping the ground, trying to keep my hands from trembling. The driver in the car, pale, shaking, muttering under his breath, was frozen in place, his fingers white knuckled on the steering wheel. Backup was supposed to be minutes away. Minutes felt like hours. I heard it first as a subtle shift of air, almost a sigh, a faint exhale from the trunk of his car. I froze, heart hammering. The locks had clicked on their own before, but this was different. Something alive, slow, steady breathing, shallow but deliberate, moving behind the steel barrier of the trunk. I wanted to call it imagination. Wanted to tell myself it was my own fear, bouncing off the wet road, echoing in the empty night. But the sound didn't lie. I crouched slightly, peering through the shadow cast by the streetlight. The trunk lid seemed to pulse, almost imperceptibly, like something breathing inside was pushing against the metal from the inside. The driver's eyes flicked to me, pleading, silent, trembling. He knew what I couldn't yet admit to myself. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need you to step out of the car. Now." He shook his head violently, lips quivering. I can't." His words trailed off, swallowed by the night. The air around us thickened. It wasn't fog. It was heavier, dense, pressing in. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. I circled the car slowly, flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. Static, endless, unresponsive static. Backup wasn't coming. The world beyond the streetlights had vanished. Buildings, signs, even the faint glow of distant traffic, gone. Just me, the trembling driver, and the sound of something alive in that trunk. I swallowed hard, trying to force reason back into my mind. Something alive, but not human, not entirely. I crouched lower, pressing my ear toward the trunk, listening. Breath, wet, shallow, irregular, like lungs struggling against a cage. The locks rattled again, slowly, almost like a heartbeat. My pulse raced. My training told me to secure the scene, to follow protocol. My gut screamed that protocol didn't matter here. Nothing about this was protocol. The driver's voice broke the silence. "Please, please don't open it." Trembling, whispering, eyes wide with something beyond fear, desperation. He wasn't just afraid of me. He was afraid of what I would release. I took a slow step back, trying to anchor myself. I tried to calm my own racing thoughts. Something in the trunk, something alive, was aware of me. I scanned the surroundings. Empty street, wet asphalt, my own shadow stretching in the dim light. Then a subtle shift. The reflection in the driver's side mirror. Movement. Too quick. Too fluid for a human. Something leaned just beneath the edge of the trunk. Invisible except for a faint ripple across the metal surface. Like the skin of water disturbed. My stomach turned. I took a steadying breath. "Listen," I said, voice low, calm, trying to mask the tremor in my own chest. "Whatever's in there, I need you to tell me. Now." He shook his head again, stammering. "You don't understand. It won't." His gaze flicked to the rear window. I followed it. Empty road. No signs of life. Just a faint, wet rustle of leaves and wind, carrying a scent, iron, damp soil, and something rotten. The trunk's breathing changed, slower, then sharper, uneven, like lungs convulsing. I realized with a sickening clarity that whatever it wasn't just alive. It was aware of us, counting, waiting, calculating. The driver's trembling escalated, a low whimper escaping his lips. He tried to twist to shield the trunk, but he was too weak, too terrified. I glanced down at my flashlight, beam trembling across the car, the wet asphalt, the shadows curling under the streetlight. I thought about opening the trunk, just to see, just to understand. Every fiber of my body screamed against it. Something alive inside, something I couldn't comprehend, moving, breathing, waiting. And yet my training, my curiosity, my need to face what others ran from urged me closer. Another shift. The trunk lid lifted slightly, a hairline gap forming. Something pressed against the metal from the inside. I froze, chest tight. The sound of breathing grew, louder, wet, irregular, a slow, dragging rasp. My pulse raced. The driver gasped, pressed his forehead against the wheel. Don't! I crouched closer, flashlight angled just above the trunk. Nothing visible, but the sound, breathing, wet, alive, was undeniable, not mechanical, not human. My hand trembled over my radio, trying again for backup. Static, endless, mocking static. I realized then that we were isolated. Completely. The world had shifted. Only the car, the driver, and the thing inside the trunk existed. The driver's eyes met mine. Panic. Pleading, silent understanding. He knew what I couldn't yet see. I wanted to reassure him, to step back, to do anything but act. But the sound, the breathing, it demanded acknowledgement. Slow, wet, alive, like lungs pressing against the steel, pushing, yearning to be free. I took another breath, try and stay grounded. Flashlight beam trembling over the locks, over the steel. My own reflection shimmered in the car's wet surface. My breath quickened as the trunk shifted again, tiny movements, almost imperceptible. And then, for the first time, I thought I saw it, two eyes, faint, wet, peering from the darkness inside, blinking slowly, calculating. I stumbled back, heart hammering, body frozen. The driver whimpered, voice breaking, "Please, it won't stop." The air itself felt alive now, pressing closer, pressing down. I realized we were trapped not by walls, not by asphalt, but by the presence inside the trunk. Something patient, something intelligent, something that could wait forever if it had to. Another subtle click. The breathing changed rhythm. Sharp, slow, wet, waiting. I felt it in my bones. The awareness. It was measuring me, counting my heartbeat, learning my fears. The driver's trembling was contagious. Fear radiated from him, contagious and thick. I clenched my fists, grounded myself, and then a sound. Soft, almost a whisper, not from the trunk, not from the car, but from somewhere else. Behind us, the wet rustle of leaves again, closer, as if something circled, invisible, waiting for a signal. My pulse leapt. I shone the flashlight down the empty street. Nothing, nothing alive. Only the car, the driver, the trunk, and the breathing inside. I realized finally, this wasn't about a nervous driver. This wasn't about a traffic stop. This was about survival, about a presence alive, intelligent, aware, and patient enough to wait for us both. I had to stay calm. I had to understand. Step wrong. And whatever was inside the trunk could learn, could strike, could escape. I crouched again, flashlight steady, voice low. "It's okay. I need to see," I said. But even as I spoke, I knew we weren't negotiating with fear. We were negotiating with something ancient, patient, something alive that understood every breath we took. The driver's pleading eyes were fixed on me, wet with tears. "Please don't." The breathing shifted again, wet, irregular. The air grew heavier. The locks rattled, subtle, deliberate. Something alive, aware and waiting. And I understood with a sickening clarity. We were not alone. Not by accident. Not by chance. I stepped back, heart hammering, knowing this night would not end like any other. The trunk waited. The driver trembled. And the road, The road had vanished behind us. I remember the moment I released the latch. My hands were shaking, wet with sweat and cold from the night air. The metal of the trunk was slick beneath my fingers, and the faint exhale of air, slow, wet, deliberate, hadn't stopped. It was a rhythm now, a presence, patient and aware, pressing against the edges of my mind. I pulled the trunk open. Empty. Nothing. Dark, metallic emptiness staring back at me. My flashlight cut to the blackness in a narrow beam, bouncing across the spare tire, the jack, the crumpled floor mat. Nothing alive. Nothing moving. Just the hollow steel echoing my own heartbeat. I swallowed hard. Relief tried to creep in, but it didn't last, because then I heard it again. Behind me, clothes, slender, wet breaths, uneven, rasping, coming from the air around me, not the trunk. I spun slowly, flashlight sweeping the ground, the street, the dark tree line beyond the wet asphalt. Empty, silent, no one, nothing. The driver was frozen, hand pressed his mouth, eyes wide with the same terror I felt. His shaking had intensified, every muscle taut, ready to bolt but trapped by fear. I glanced at him, then back at the trunk. Empty, but the sound, it was still there. I realized, with a sick twist in my stomach, that the sound wasn't coming from the car anymore. It was behind me, invisible, patient, deliberate. I stepped backward, the asphalt slick under my boots. The air felt heavier, damp, pressing on my chest like it had weight. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight beam cutting through shadows, seeking, hunting. The breathing didn't move. It didn't flee. It waited. Every exhale was a countdown. I felt it against my skin, wet, cold, aware of me, sizing me up. My radio crackled. Static. Endless, mocking static. Backup wasn't coming. The world outside the streetlight had vanished, leaving only the car, the driver, the trunk, and the presence behind me. I tried to convince myself of logic, perhaps a stray animal, perhaps a trick of the wind. But the rhythm, wet and uneven, was unmistakable. It mimicked life but wasn't bound by human form. I crouched slightly, flashlight sweeping the wet asphalt. My reflection shimmered in puddles. For a brief moment I saw it, or thought I did, a shadow moving against the tree line, fluid, almost imperceptible, a motion that didn't belong to the wind. I froze, breath caught in my throat. The exhale of whatever was behind me slowed, deliberate, patient, counting me, watching me. That I glanced at the driver again. He whispered something, voice raw, trembling. It's still here. I nodded slowly, trying to mask my own terror. I know. I said, voice low, even grounded myself. Every instinct screamed to run. Every fiber in my body screamed that I should leave. But I couldn't. Not yet. The presence demanded acknowledgement. I edged away from the car, flashlight sweeping every shadow. The breathing followed, not with speed, but with patience. Slow, wet, uneven, filling the air behind me, pressing closer. I realized with sinking horror that empty space didn't protect me. Darkness didn't hide me. It could exist in the air, in the shadows, in the silence between beats of my own heart. That I looked back at the trunk. Empty. Nothing to contain it. Nothing to explain it. My mind scrambled for reason, for logic, for anything familiar. But there was nothing. Only the wet, deliberate breaths, and the knowledge that I was being observed by something that didn't need eyes. The driver pressed his face to the dashboard, whispering incoherently. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to anchor myself. The flashlight trembled in my grip. I moved it toward the tree line again. Shadows shifted, fleeting just beyond focus. A shape, or my mind breaking under the weight of what I'd heard for hours. I didn't dare lower the light. The wet exhale grew louder, closer. I stepped back again, boots sliding on slick asphalt. The driver whimpered, curling into himself. I realized with a cold certainty that whatever this was, it wasn't confined to the trunk, to the car, to any space I could measure. It existed in the air and the night, and it had chosen this moment, this place, to observe us. That I clenched my fists, trying to ground myself. It can't be real, I whispered, more to myself than him. But my own voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the darkness around us. The presence responded, Not with sound, not with motion, but with tension in the air, a pressure that made my skin crawl. Awareness, intelligence, patience that I circled the car slowly, flashlight sweeping the wet asphalt. The air shifted. Another faint exhale closer, brushing the back of my neck. My pulse spiked. I spun. Nothing. Nothing visible. Only wet, deliberate, uneven breaths in the night air. The driver trembled beside me, silent tears running down his cheeks. "It shouldn't exist," he whispered. I nodded, unable to reply. I didn't understand either. I realized I'd been holding my own breath, waiting, watching, trying to find an anchor. But there was no anchor. No sound but that wet exhale. No motion but shadows stretching and dissolving into darkness. The world beyond this streetlight didn't exist anymore. Only the presence, the car, the driver, and me that I stepped toward the trunk again, almost against my own will, flashlight trembling. Empty. Nothing inside. And yet I knew with certainty that the source of the breathing was behind me, in the night, in the shadows, in the very air itself. Not human, not confined, patient, waiting. I circled, trying to maintain distance, searching for origin. The wet breaths moved with me, keeping pace, patient, deliberate. The driver followed my movements with wide, fearful eyes, silent, trembling. I felt the weight of it, pressing in, heavy, cold, wet, intelligent. I wanted to run, to escape, to leave, but the world beyond this moment had vanished. Only the night, the asphalt, the car, and whatever waited in the darkness remained. The breathing slowed, then quickened, irregular, uneven, teasing. I shone the flashlight into the shadows. A fleeting ripple in the air, like water disturbed almost nothing. My stomach churned. The driver whimpered again, curling further into himself. I realized with clarity that we weren't being hunted yet. This was observation, patience, something ancient and aware, testing us. I forced myself to remain calm, voice low. It's just air," I said, but the words sounded empty, a feeble attempt to anchor reality. The presence responded, not with motion, but with weight in the air, tension that made every hair on my arm stand. The wet exhale slowed again, a silent pulse in the night, watching, waiting. Minutes or hours passed. I don't know which. Time had dissolved. Only the breathing remained, wet, uneven, patient. I stayed close to the car, close to the driver, flashlight sweeping shadows, trying to find some clue, some anchor, but there was nothing. Only that rhythm, that presence, alive and aware, unseen yet undeniable. Finally, I whispered to the driver, "Stay close. Don't turn your back." His trembling nod was all the answer I needed. The trunk remained empty. The wet breath persisted, and the night had consumed everything else. I realized then that whatever this was, it wasn't bound by steel or flesh. It existed in the very air we breathed. And I understood, with a sinking certainty, that opening the trunk hadn't released it. It had merely been waiting. Waiting for acknowledgement. Waiting to remind us that the world we thought we knew had vanished, and that we were no longer in control. The driver's eyes met mine again, pleading. I clenched my fists, grounded myself, preparing. The breathing behind me continued, patient, wet, uneven. I didn't know if it would ever stop. I didn't know if I would survive this night. But I knew one thing with clarity. Nothing inside the trunk had been the danger. The danger was always behind me. I remember the license plate like it burned itself into my mind. It shouldn't exist. Not in any system I had access to. DMV, state, national databases. Nothing. Yet it was real. I saw it with my own eyes, dark against the wet asphalt under the yellow streetlight, slick with rain. The car slowed as I pulled behind it. Tires hissing, windshield streaked with water. I switched on the patrol lights. The reflection caught in the rear window for a moment, but the driver stayed hidden in shadow, face turned away. I couldn't see anything clearly, just darkness, trembling behind the wheel. I tapped the mic, requesting a plate check. Static, then the words I never wanted to hear. No record found. My stomach dropped. I had seen typos before, old plates, stolen tags. But this was impossible. The letters and numbers existed in the world, sure, but they weren't registered. Not anywhere. It was as if the plate had come from nowhere. The driver didn't move, didn't respond to my lights, my horn, my voice over the loudspeaker. Just still trembling. The rain hit the hood of my cruiser in steady, soft drumming. I noticed the way the car sat, too low. Tires worn unevenly, a faint metallic scrape each time it passed a puddle. I could hear the shudder of the suspension under the slick weight of water. I stepped out, flashlight in hand. Wet, cold, wind biting my neck. I called to the driver again. No answer. Just a faint exhale through the cracked window. I tried to see the face, but every angle, every reflection in the glass, showed nothing but shadow. The trembling continued, almost synchronized with my own heartbeat. Something about the stillness was wrong. Normal drivers panic or shout, ask questions, give explanations. This nothing, just presence. I approached the driver's side slowly, flashlight beam cutting through the rain. My boots made shallow splashes in puddles along the curb. I could see the hand on the wheel, pale, trembling, fingers tight around the leather. I tapped on the window with my flashlight. Nothing. I could feel the tension rising, the world narrow into the space between us. Rain, asphalt, and metal. Then I heard it, a faint shift from the trunk, a sound of something moving, sliding, wet, low. I froze. My hand hovered over my radio, heartbeat echoing in my ears. Dispatch! Run the plate, I said, voice tight. The reply came back weak, hesitant. Still no record. My pulse raced. You sure? The dispatcher's voice held the same disbelief I felt. I circled the car slowly, flashlight beam trembling across tires, wet asphalt, mirrors. The driver still didn't look at me, still trembling. I noticed now the scratches along the side panels, deep, uneven, as if the car had been scraped along some sharp edge not long ago. Sir, can you step out? I asked, voice firm, but low. Still nothing, just the trembling, the shadow behind the wheel, the wet night pressing down around me. I took a step closer. The rain washed over my uniform, cold and sharp, but I felt it more in my chest, a pressure I couldn't shake. I tapped the trunk again. A faint scuff, almost a shift. I held my flashlight tight, sweeping the rear of the car. Nothing visible, nothing moving, just a sense of expectation. The license plate stared back at me from the light, black letters on silver metal, staring like eyes without life. Something tickled the back of my mind, a question I couldn't answer. Why would someone exist in the world without a record, without a registration, without a history? My training screamed at me for explanations. My gut whispered that this wasn't normal, that this was something else. I radioed again, trying to get back up closer. Unit 1, I need a visual on a vehicle with a plate. But the rain washed my words away. Static. The dispatcher repeated, no record found. The world outside the streetlight felt hollow, unreal. I noticed in the mirrors, the side mirror reflected my own face. Pale, wet, tense. But the driver, I couldn't see them. The reflection swallowed whatever should have been there. I stepped closer, tried to see around the glass. Just shadow, trembling shadow. I considered opening the trunk. Standard procedure. Training. But something stopped me. The car felt alive, like it was breathing, waiting, aware of my hesitation. My hand hovered over the latch. The driver shifted slightly, ever so slightly, and I froze. Just a movement in the darkness. And my imagination leapt ahead. I checked the interior again. Gloved hands on the wheel. Empty passenger seat. But the trembling, it wasn't just fear. It was deliberate. It was controlled. It was watching. Waiting. My flashlight trembled with mine. The asphalt reflected the light in jagged streaks, wet and distorted. Minutes stretched. I radioed again, tried to anchor myself in procedure, in normalcy. Still static. Still disbelief. I circled once more. The car remained silent, shadowed, trembling, waiting. And then I noticed it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound from inside. The car shuddered, not from rain, not from wind. Something moving, something breathing. I stepped back, heart hammering, mind racing. My training said it should be a person, Trapped, injured, desperate. But every instinct screamed no. Not human. Not possible. Not real. My flashlight scanned the glass again. The driver didn't move, didn't blink, just trembling shadowed. I radioed again. Dispatch, Unit 1. I need confirmation. But the words felt meaningless. I realized with growing horror that if the plate didn't exist, then this car, this presence, didn't exist in the same world I did. The trembling was too synchronized with my own heartbeat, the shadow too patient. I crouched slightly, flashlight beam scanning every angle. The asphalt, the mirrors, the hood, everything normal, everything familiar, except the car and the driver and the license plate, that metallic silver, impossible letters. Waiting, observing, alive in some way I couldn't define. The rain slowed, the trembling lessened, the world seemed to exhale. I realized I had been holding my breath, counting shadows, waiting for something to move, to answer, to break the silence. But nothing moved. Only the wet asphalt reflected the streetlight, and the impossible license plate stared back, still unrecorded, still existing somewhere between my mind and the world. I stepped back, calling again for backup. This time, I waited, listening, grounding myself. The car didn't flee. It didn't respond. The driver remained a trembling shadow behind the wheel, face hidden, watching, waiting. And I understood with a cold certainty that the night had just begun. Whatever was inside that car, or whatever the car itself was, didn't need records. It didn't need registration. It existed outside, beyond systems, beyond rules. I wasn't just observing it. I was part of it now, part of a night that had no beginning and no defined end. I felt the weight of it pressing down, static in the radio, trembling in the tires, shadow in the glass. The wet asphalt reflected nothing but uncertainty, and I realized I would remember this license plate forever, not because it existed in the system, but because it existed in me, waiting, watching, patient. The world beyond that streetlight disappeared. Only the car, the shadowed driver, the impossible license plate, and my own heartbeat remained. And I knew, without knowing why, that normalcy had ended the moment I pulled behind that car. The rain had stopped, but the asphalt still gleamed under the dim streetlights, like a mirror I didn't want to look into. I stood at the driver's side, flashlight cutting through the shadows, trying to make sense of the trembling man in front of me. I thought I had seen everything last night, every corner of fear and confusion in my job, but nothing prepared me for what came next. "I know your name," he said, voice low, almost casual. I froze. My hand hovered over the flashlight, gripping it tighter than I realized. "Excuse me," I said. The words sounded weak, my voice brittle. My brain tried to catch up. My name isn't something strangers usually know. Not at this hour, not here, not in this empty stretch of road. "I know what you had for dinner last night," he said, "and I know the argument you had with your partner before your shift." I stepped back, heart hammering. Logic screamed at me. Surveillance cameras? Informants? Coincidence? None of it made sense. The man sitting there, trembling but somehow calm, had no obvious way of knowing any of this. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to regain control. The sound of my own voice startled me in the quiet street. His eyes were black in the shadows, unblinking. Not angry, not scared. Just there, watching, knowing. "You always carry your keys in your left pocket, don't you?" His words were soft but precise, almost surgical. I glanced down instinctively. He was right. My keys, worn and scratched, heavy in my left pocket. My skin prickled. How could he know? I took a step closer, flashlight trembling, casting wild shadows across the car and asphalt. "Listen, you need to..." My word stopped. The car door creaked as he shifted slightly. Not enough to leave the seat, but enough to send a shiver through me. "You don't remember the first time we met," he said. "But I do." Something deep inside my chest tightened. My mind raced. First time? I drive hundreds of miles, see dozens of people a day. I couldn't place him. I searched my memory. Empty. And yet there was a weight in his words, a certainty that felt heavier than gravity itself. I radioed for backup, but my voice shook. The dispatcher's line crackled weakly, half drowned in static. Unit 1 repeat. Nothing, just my own heartbeat echoing back at me. He leaned forward slightly, just enough that I caught a glint of something in the low light. A silver chain around his neck, a key dangling. My breath caught. That key, I'd seen it before, in a locker at the station. Not mine, not anyone's in the current shift, but familiar, impossible. Why do you know this? I asked, swallowing hard. Every instinct told me to step back, to retreat into the safety of the cruiser. But curiosity, a dangerous and stupid curiosity, pushed me closer. He smiled faintly, but not warmly, because I've been waiting, watching, remembering. You don't see it, but I see everything that slips past you. Names, faces, mistakes, yours included. I shook my head, trying to clear the disbelief, trying to find a logical explanation. Surveillance? Hidden cameras? Someone stalking me? None of it fit. Not the trembling, the calm, the shadowed eyes, the wet night pressing against my skin like it was part of him. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, voice quieter, more strained than I realized. Sure you do, he said. His smile widened just slightly. You think you can hide in the darkness. Think you're safe behind the badge. But I know your family, the ones you love. I know the names you whispered when you thought no one was listening. My stomach turned. My hands gripped the flashlight until my knuckles ached. I wanted to run, to reach the cruiser, to call for help that might not come. But the car, the driver, the impossible knowledge, they held me, anchored me to this wet asphalt, to a night that had no rules. You've done things, he said, things you pretend don't exist. But they do. Every wrong turn, every lie, every call ignored. I remember them all. And I'm not even human in the way you understand. Something cold ran down my spine. The words were absurd, impossible, but he said them like they were simple facts. My mind jumped from thought to thought, desperate for escape, desperate for logic. Nothing, only the rain-slicked road, the faint flicker of streetlight in the dark, knowing eyes in front of me. I tried to step back, foot hitting puddles, splash echoing in the empty night. The sound startled him, but he didn't flinch, only leaned closer. And in that movement, I noticed the hands on the wheel again, pale, trembling, but not human. The fingers too long, the knuckles sharp in the dim light. You see, he whispered, I am always here, watching, waiting, remembering. And tonight, I choose to speak. I swallowed hard. My flashlight's beam cut through the windshield, across the dashboard, across the trembling face that was half shadow, half knowing presence. I realized with a cold certainty, every moment I thought I had control, I was already inside something bigger than I could measure, something patient and endless. I radioed again. Backup, urgency thick in my voice. Unit 1 need assistance. My words trailed off. Static. The dispatcher's voice drowned under an invisible weight. My own voice seemed to echo back at me, small and weak. He tilted his head, slightly listening to my panic, my fear, my thoughts. Your name is Kashif, isn't it? He said it like a statement, not a question. I froze. How do you know my name? My mouth opened, closed, open again. No words, just the weight of it, the impossibility. And yet, he didn't lie. Not the name, not the details, not the trembling certainty in my chest. You can't run from me, he said. Not in this world. Not anywhere you know. I am patient. I am quiet. And I remember everything. Always. The wet asphalt glimmered. My reflection caught in the puddles, fragmented, fractured. And in each piece I saw him. Not fully, not physically, but in the fragments I felt him. Everywhere I looked, everywhere I thought I was alone. I realized then, with the sick, sinking understanding of someone trapped, that this wasn't about the license plate, not about procedure, not about rules. This was about me, about what I knew and didn't know, about a presence that could step into my life and know it better than I ever could. I stepped back, flashlight quivering, trying to measure distance, trying to ground myself in reality. What do you want? I whispered, voice trembling. He didn't answer immediately, only leaned back, hand still on the wheel, shadows stretching across the interior. Then, faintly, almost kindly, he said, "To remind you that the world is bigger than your badge, bigger than your systems, bigger than the control you think you have. And you will learn." The words echoed, ringing in my skull. My pulse raced. My training, my instincts, my entire understanding of the world felt inadequate. I realized the trembling was contagious. Not his, not mine. The night itself had begun to shake. I glanced down at the dashboard. The license plate. Still no record. Still impossible. But now I understood. It wasn't the car or the plate or the shadowed figure inside. It was knowledge. Impossible, invasive, patient knowledge. That's what was real. That's what followed me. And I knew in that moment that the night had only just begun. That no matter where I ran or how fast or how far, I would feel him watching, knowing, waiting, patient, infinite. And I realized, my chest tightening, that I might already be too late. The station smelled of stale coffee and paper, the fluorescent lights humming low and steady, like a pulse I couldn't escape. I sat at my desk, staring at the computer screen, staring at the plate again. The same plate that had haunted me all night, the one that shouldn't exist. I had run it through every database, every registry, every system we had. Nothing, no record, until I found it. The microfiche, a dusty file tucked in the farthest cabinet. The kind you almost never touch. I pulled it out, hand shaking despite myself. The plate, the exact letters and numbers. Faded photographs, yellowed pages. A car, a crash, blood on asphalt, twisted metal, a life ended. Decades ago. 30 years, maybe more. And now, here it was. I pressed my palm against the file, like I could feel the ghost of that night through the paper. My pulse thudded in my ears. I couldn't explain it. How could this plate, decades dead, suddenly be in use again? And the driver, the trembling man, the one who knew my name, what connection did he have to this? I tried to shake off the feeling, the creeping sense that someone was watching me even here. But the station was empty, late shift, only me and the hum of the lights. And still, the hair on my neck stood up. I flipped through the photographs. The car in the file looked ordinary, but the shadows and the pictures, they didn't feel right. Faces twisted in ways that weren't natural. A woman crying, a child reaching out, and then the driver. Almost like he'd been photographed, but not in a real moment, more like a memory frozen in fear. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. My hands rubbed my face, trying to force logic into the swirling dread. This was an old case, closed, filed away, but the plate was alive, like the past itself had decided to come back. I closed the file slowly, trying to steady myself. Try to convince myself it was coincidence, some clerical error. But the memory of his voice from last night, the way he knew what I had for dinner, the arguments I had, the names I held close, kept pressing into my skull. I looked around the dim office, every shadow suddenly stretching too long, too dark. I could feel him again, watching, waiting, smiling from the empty stretch of road, patient, infinite. That knowledge of me, it wasn't human, not the way humans knew. It was something else, something that moved through time and memory, through plates and files and old photographs. I went back to the file, flipped it open again. Notes from officers long gone, fingerprints yellow with age, reports scribbled in neat handwriting. A fatal crash, a young man just like me, same height, same build, same kind of quiet arrogance that comes with believing you understand the rules of the world. And then I saw it, the last note, written in shaky handwriting, almost as if the officer knew something he couldn't explain. The driver seemed aware, knows things he shouldn't, like he sees the world in pieces. Pieces of the future, the past, the people who will come after. I fear he is not entirely here. I froze, my chest tightened. I could hear my own heartbeat like a drum, hammering the rhythm of panic into my skull. The trembling driver, the voice, the knowledge. Could it be him? Could the man on the road, knowing my name, carry my memories before I even live them, be the same presence as the one in this file? I tried to stand, tried to leave the office, but my legs felt heavy, reluctant. The fluorescent lights flickered, a subtle shift that made every shadow stretch into shapes my mind couldn't fully comprehend. I imagined him there, leaning against a car, staring, patient, knowing, always knowing. I closed my eyes, trying to ground myself, telling myself it was impossible, that it was coincidence, that the plate was a cruel trick of fate. But the sound of breathing, not mine, not in the office, but in my mind, echoing in the space between memory and reality. I knew it. That same presence that had followed me on the highway, the one who knew everything, was here in the silence too. I opened the file again. Photographs of the crash, the mangled metal, the lifeless body. But there was something else I hadn't noticed at first. A faint blur in every photo. Shadows that didn't belong to the people, to the car, to the street. Something moving just beyond the camera's reach. Something patient. Something that remembered. I could feel it. That knowledge of me. That endless observation. Creeping through the decades, through the paper, through the glass of photographs. Watching me. Waiting. Like it had always been there. And I had only just noticed. I traced the plate with my finger, almost afraid to touch it. The letters seemed to shimmer under my palm. Like the paper itself remembered the metal, the car, the crash. The past wasn't past. It was living, breathing, and it had a name. The office door creaked. I spun around, flashlight in hand, sweat cold on my back. No one, only the hum of the fluorescent lights. But the hair on my arm stood up. I could feel it, that presence, just behind me, always just behind me, watching, waiting, patient, infinite. I tried to close the file, tried to shut the past away, but the shadows and photographs seemed to twist, to reach out, to whisper secrets I couldn't fully hear. Names, dates, faces, and then one phrase, clear as day, like the words were pressed into my brain. You are next. I dropped the file, heart hammering, breathing ragged. Tried to tell myself it was fear, that my mind was playing tricks. But the whisper followed me, echoed in my ears. You are next. I grabbed my radio. Backup, urgency in my voice. Unit 1 need immediate. Static, nothing. Just the hollow pulse of the empty station. I felt the weight of time pressing down. The past, present, future, all collapsing into a single moment. And the plate, the car, the driver, the presence, everything connected, everything waiting. I backed away from the desk, eyes darting to the shadows again. The hum of the lights shifted, a subtle vibration, a breath in the air. I could feel it, around me, behind me, in the air between the cabinets and the dusty file shelves. Patient, watching, infinite, and I realized then with a cold clarity that it didn't matter if I left the office. The presence didn't follow by wheels, by footsteps, or by doors. It followed by knowing, by patience, by inevitability. It was in the file, in the photographs, in the plate, in me. I wanted to run, to leave, but my legs didn't move. My mind, grasping at logic, at rules, at reality, couldn't find footing. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning, that the decades, the lives lost, the accidents, the drivers, the names, they were all connected, that I was connected, and somewhere, in the shadow of the street, in the whisper of paper and glass and metal, the presence waited, patient, infinite, watching, and I knew, with a sick certainty, that the night had only just begun. I was still sitting in the patrol car, coffee gone cold, when the radio crackled. Dispatch. The voice sharp clipped. Unit 4, 4:03 a.m. Reports of a vehicle stopped on County Road 12. No lights. No movement. Check it out. I frowned. That stretch of road didn't see traffic this late. Not even locals. Nothing but trees, shadows, and the occasional deer. I flicked on the lights and eased the cruiser onto the asphalt. Fog was creeping low, curling around the headlights like fingers reaching to pull me off the road. My tires hummed against the wet pavement. Every mile stretched longer than the last. I could feel the pull of the darkness, heavy and patient. Then I saw it, the car, Dark, still, almost swallowed by the fog. No hazards, no glow from inside. Just a silhouette, motionless, on the shoulder. I slowed, every instinct screaming at me that something was wrong. The door was closed, windows up, no sign of life. My hand hovered over the door handle, the other clutching the wheel. The radio clicked again, static whispering in my ear. Unit 4, approach with caution. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the tension knotting in my chest. The kind of calm you force when you know the night is about to stretch you thin. The kind of calm that fools you into thinking you're in control. I stepped out. The fog wrapped around me immediately, cold and wet. My boots crunched on the gravel. I could see the car's reflection in the wet pavement, dark and heavy. The engine was off. No lights. Nothing moved, but I could feel it. Something alive inside. Waiting, I circled the car slowly. Windows tinted. Nothing, but the air smelled off, like gasoline and metal, and something else I couldn't place. My gut tightened. I leaned closer to the driver's side, hand hovering near my flashlight. Then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping from inside. Not loud, almost imperceptible, like nails against glass. I froze, heart hammering. The sound stopped, then started again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. I knocked on the window. Hey, everything okay? My voice sounded small, swallowed by the fog. No answer, just that tapping again. My stomach turned. Something was here, something in the car. Watching, waiting. I circled to the back. The trunk, locked. I rapped my knuckles against the metal. No response. Silence. But my ears, no, my whole body, told me I wasn't alone. I could feel breathing, faint, almost synchronized with my heartbeat. Dispatch's voice crackled again. Unit 4, backup is 10 minutes out. 10 minutes. 10 minutes for whatever was in that car to make a choice. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone fell asleep. Maybe a mechanic's work truck. But the tapping, the breathing, it wasn't right. Not human. Not entirely. I could feel the presence pressing to the fog, into my chest, into my thoughts. I stepped back, trying to catch my breath. The headlights of the cruiser cut through the fog, but not enough. Shadows clung to the trees, thick and dark, and the air felt alive with patience. Every instinct told me to run, but the call, the duty, it anchored me here. I circled back to the driver's side, flashlight in hand. The glass was cold, slick with condensation. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came from deep inside. My knuckles ached from pounding on the window, but still, nothing. No one responded. I leaned closer, and then I heard it. My name, whispered, soft, close, but not human, not the radio, not someone calling from the distance. It came from inside the car. My name, my full name. I stumbled back, heart racing, lungs burning. How can anyone know that? How can anyone be here? I turned to check the road, the trees, the fog. Nothing. No headlights, no movement. Just the car. Patient, waiting that I reached the trunk again, hand shaking. Tap, tap, tap. Louder now, as if it knew I was listening, as if it was mocking me. I pressed my palm against the metal. Cold, empty, yet the presence, the knowledge, pressed against me. I could feel eyes, endless, watching through the glass, through the metal, through time itself. I took a step back, trying to force logic into the panic, trying to convince myself I was imagining it, that it was the fog, the isolation, the early hour. But my mind wouldn't let go. That whisper, my name, it wasn't fear, it was knowing. Something aware, something patient. The sound of the engine humming behind me made me whip around. My cruiser, still running, but the lights flickered, and I thought I saw movement, just for a second. Shadows shifting unnaturally in the fog. A figure leaning against the car, dark, still, watching, waiting. I swallowed hard, gripping my flashlight tighter. 10 minutes until backup, I reminded myself. 10 minutes to figure out what I was dealing with, but I could feel it. The presence wasn't going to wait. It wasn't limited to doors or trunks or windows. It existed everywhere. The fog, the air, the shadows pressing closer. Tap, tap, tap. My name again. Clear. Inside my skull now. Not just a whisper. A demand. An insistence. I stepped back, hand shaking, flashlight swinging. I had to keep it together. Focus. Backup would be here. And yet, the fog wrapped around me, thick and tangible, and I knew it could hold me in place, could keep me here long enough for something else to arrive. Something older than the asphalt, older than the call, older than me. I crouched slightly, trying to see inside, tried to convince myself there was a person, a mechanic, someone who had simply pulled over. But the knowledge pressing into my chest, the whisper of my name, the rhythm of the tapping, it wasn't human. It wasn't someone tired or lost. It was something aware, patient, waiting, infinite. The radio buzzed again. Unit 4 status? My voice cracked. I'm at the vehicle. Nothing yet. Static answered me. Nothing more. I circled once more. The shadows seemed to shift with every step. The fog thickened, curling around my boots. The tapping slowed. My name whispered again. And I realized the presence wasn't just inside the car. It was here, around me, beneath me, in every breath I drew. I leaned back against the cruiser, trying to ground myself, tried to breathe, tried to think. But the car, the road, the fog, the whispering, none of it felt real in the sense I understood. And I knew, deep down, that waiting for backup wasn't protection. Waiting was part of the plan, part of its patience. And I realized something cold in the fog, darkening the road at 4:03 a.m. The presence knew me. It had always known me. And whatever was in that car, whatever waited in the fog, it wasn't just a vehicle stopped on a lonely road. It was a reminder that the world I understood, the life I believed I controlled, was only a thin layer. Beneath it was something patient, something that watched, something infinite. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. 10 minutes. I could hear the echo of the fog around me. Tap, tap, tap. My name, clear, insistent. And I realized in that moment that nothing I did, nothing I knew would matter. Not tonight, not here, not ever. The fog shifted again. The car waited. And I knew, with a certainty that made my blood ice cold, that the night had only begun. I approached the car, fog curling low around my boots, every step echoing in the silent night. Headlights cut through the mist like knives, casting shadows that stretched across the empty road. My hand hovered over the door handle, flashlight in the other, every nerve screaming. The car was still, completely empty. No one behind the wheel, no one in the back seat, no sign of life anywhere. And yet, the engine hummed low and steady, like it had a heartbeat of its own. I circled it slowly, boots crunching gravel. The air smelled of wet asphalt, cold metal, and oil. My own breath fogged the beams of the flashlight. How could this happen? Who would leave a car running like this? In the middle of nowhere, at 4 in the morning. The driver's door was locked. Windows rolled up. I tried the passenger side. Same thing, locked tight. Headlights bright. Engine alive. Nothing inside. My chest tightened. Logic fought the rising panic. But every instinct told me this wasn't normal. I leaned closer to the glass, peering into the darkness. Seats empty, dashboard untouched. Nothing moved. And yet, I felt it, watching. Something beyond the car. Something patient. I shook my head. No, I was imagining it. The fog, the isolation, the hour. That was all. A faint vibration shivered through the asphalt. Engine, running, alone. Tap, tap, tap. My knuckles hit the hood. A reflex. Silence. Then the engine seemed to hum louder, vibrating through my chest. I stepped back. Something about the rhythm. It wasn't mechanical. Not completely. I reached for the trunk, hand hovering over the latch. Backup was 10 minutes out. 10 minutes to figure out why an empty car ran in the middle of a rural road. I gritted my teeth, pressing my palm against the cold metal. Nothing. No movement. No sound but the engine, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling of presence. A shadow flickered in the corner of my eye. I spun, flashlight cutting through the fog. Nothing, just trees, bending with the wind, though the air was still. I took a deep breath. Rationality. It had to be rational. I stepped closer to the driver's window, the heat from the running engine brushing against my hands through the metal. I tapped the glass. Anyone here? My voice cracked. Only my echo answered. The fog seemed to curl tighter, pressing against my chest. Then I heard it, breathing, slow, deliberate, not from the car. From behind me, my pulse jumped, blood hammering in my ears. I spun around, flashlight swinging. Nothing, just the fog and trees, silent and patient. I tried to convince myself it was the wind. It wasn't. My skin prickled. My stomach churned. The sound came again, closer now, like someone or something had stepped behind me, just beyond the edge of the headlights. I swallowed, hand gripping the flashlight tighter, knuckles white. The engine hummed, steady, alive, empty. I took a step forward, leaning closer to the driver's side, and then I saw it, in the reflection of the side mirror, faint, flickering movement, a shadow leaning closer, patient, waiting, not human. I stumbled back, heartbeat rattling against my ribs. The car didn't seem to notice me, engine still running, headlights cutting through the fog, and the shadow, it wasn't leaving. It existed there in the glass, in the reflection, in the air itself. I circled to the rear. The trunk, locked, but the presence, it was here too. Breathing again, close, watching, not inside the metal, not inside the car, but around it, in the fog, in my own chest. I could feel it pressing, patient, knowing. I crouched slightly, tried to peer inside the back seat through the tinted glass. Nothing, empty, but my mind screamed otherwise. Something invisible, something waiting. The engine hummed again, deeper, resonant, like a heartbeat in the fog. The radio crackled. Dispatch. Unit 4 status? My voice trembled. Car is empty. Engine running. Lights on. Nobody inside. Static answered me. Nothing more. 10 minutes. 10 minutes for whatever this was to decide I wasn't part of the night anymore. I stepped back, flashlights sweeping the edges of the fog. Trees swayed though the air was still. Shadows moved when I wasn't looking. My breath caught. The sound of breathing behind me. I spun. Nothing. Fog. Silence. And the hum of the engine. The hood vibrated faintly under my palm. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. Not from the engine. Something tapping. Deliberate. Close. Waiting. My name whispered somewhere beneath the wind. Not human. Not radio. Inside my skull, insistent. I tried to steady my shaking hands. Looked at the car. Empty. Engine alive. Headlights cutting through fog. Nothing else. And yet, it was alive in ways I couldn't explain. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. I knew, deep down, this wasn't prank. This wasn't a lost driver. This was something else. Patient. Infinite. I backed toward my cruiser, heart hammering. Engine hummed. Shadows shifted. The fog pressed closer, curling around my boots. Tap, tap, tap. My name whispered again. Closer. Clearer. Insistent. I realized with cold certainty that the car wasn't waiting for me to find its occupant. It didn't have one. The engine, the lights, the presence, all it needed was time. Time for me to see it. Time for me to hear it. Time for me to understand that the road, the fog, the night, they belonged to something else. I took a deep breath, tried to calm my nerves, trying to ground myself. But the tapping, the engine, the whispering, it wouldn't stop. And I understood then that waiting for backup wasn't safety. Waiting was part of the plan, part of the patience. The shadow flickered again, just for a second, on the edge of the headlights. I could feel it in the air, in the metal, in the fog, watching me, waiting. And I realized the car had been empty all along, yes, but nothing about this night was empty. I stepped back, flashlight sweeping the road, the trees, the fog. Engine hummed. Headlights cut through the mist. And I knew, with an icy certainty, that whatever was here had all the time it needed. And I didn't. I thought I was alone when I turned back to my cruiser. Thought I could take a deep breath and shake the tension from my shoulders. The fog clung to the ground like wet cloth, curling around tires of my car, hiding the road edges. My boots crunched on gravel, the sound loud, too loud in the cold, empty night. And then I saw it. Someone was in the driver's seat, not leaning, not slouched, sitting perfectly upright, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. My heart slammed into my chest. My mind tried to rationalize. A stranded motorist? A prankster? But no, this wasn't a person I recognized, not a shadow in fog. Something about the figure made my stomach tighten. It didn't breathe right, didn't move right, just existed, waiting. I stopped 20 feet away, flashlight raised. Light cut through the mist, bouncing off the polished cruiser hood. The figure didn't flinch, didn't look at me. I stepped closer, each crunch of gravel echoing, announcing my presence. The closer I got, the more the world seemed to tilt. Fog thickened, curling into my vision, curling into my lungs. Who's there? My voice cracked. I tried again, louder, firmer. Step out. No answer. Just a hum of my own blood in my ears and the fog curling around the car like smoke from some unseen fire. I circled the cruiser. Engine off. Door locked. No one should have been able to sit there. I was alone. Backup was still 5 minutes away. 5 minutes to figure out why my own patrol car had a passenger. The figure turned its head, slowly. My flashlight caught the face. Pale, blank, eyes that didn't focus, didn't blink, and then it smiled. Small, controlled, but not warm. Something inhuman hid behind the lips. A memory I couldn't place tug at the back of my mind. A memory of something I shouldn't remember. I stumbled back. My hands gripped my flashlight. So tightly it hurt, my pulse rattled in my ears. I told myself it was someone's idea of a joke. A stranger had climbed into my car while I was distracted. Rationality clawed at me. Logic tried to pull me out of the fog, pressing against my skull. But the figure stayed still, waiting, patient. I edged closer to the door, careful, tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. I reached for my radio. Fingers trembling, I tried to call backup. Nothing. Static. Crackle. The kind of static that feels like it carries intention, like it's listening, like it knows. A sudden flicker of movement caught my eye. Headlights from the empty road behind me. Distant and dim, cutting through the fog. I spun toward it. Nothing. Just fog. My heart raced. The figure in the cruiser didn't move. Didn't need to. Presence was enough. I circled the passenger side. Flashlight scanning the interior. Empty. Completely empty. No one there. But the driver's seat. Someone was sitting there. How? Impossible. Physics, reason, reality itself seemed to twist around this impossible truth. I froze. My own reflection in the glass stared back at me. But the face, sitting in the driver's seat, it mirrored nothing. Not me. Not anything I knew. Pale. Blank. Smiling. Watching. Waiting. And then the figure leaned forward slightly, head cocking, like it knew something I didn't. I backed away. Tried to gather my thoughts. Tried to convince myself I was hallucinating. I've seen things in this job, things that gnawed at the edges of logic, but nothing like this. Nothing that could make your own car feel alien. I fumbled with my flashlight, swinging it around the interior. Empty, engine cold, mirrors reflecting fog. And yet eyes followed me. Small, blank eyes that seemed to float above the wheel, watching, patient, hungry, expecting. I stepped closer again, tried to press my hand against the window. Glass cold, solid, empty. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, and yet it felt alive. Watching, breathing me in. Every movement I made, every breath I took counted. A sound, tiny, scrape. My boot on gravel? No, it came from inside the car. Something shifted in the seat. I stumbled back. The figure's head tilted slowly, a deliberate motion, impossible for a person, a predator watching its prey, waiting for hesitation. I realized in the truth I didn't want to admit. This wasn't someone sitting in my cruiser. It wasn't human. Not completely. It was something else, something patient, something that could wait for me to return, something that knew me, knew my routines, my thoughts, my name, and it had been there all along in a place it shouldn't exist. I tried call out again. Who are you? Voice trembling, echoing through the fog. No answer, only the presence, only the impossible truth that my cruiser wasn't mine anymore. The fog shifted, or maybe I shifted. Shadows curled differently now. Shapes that hadn't been there moments ago slipped between the trees. Silent, watching, waiting. The figure inside the car didn't move, didn't flinch, and yet I could feel it pulse, like a heartbeat beneath the dashboard. I circled again, flashlight bouncing off mirrors, hood, tires, empty, engine cold, but the driver's seat, someone or something, still sat there, smiling, waiting, patient. I tried to focus, logic, reason, any anchor to reality, but the air thickened, pressing, curling around my chest. Fog seeped into my ears, into my eyes, into my thoughts. It whispered, not words, not sentences, just awareness, the sense of being observed, judged, known. I reached slowly for my door handle. Back up. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And I knew, whatever this was, it had all the time in the world. It didn't need to move. It didn't need to speak. The car, my car, the night, the fog, they were all part of it. And I was just a visitor. I took one step, then another, hand shaking on the handle. The figure leaned slightly forward again, faint, almost imperceptible. Eyes flicked toward mine. And then, just as suddenly, the seat was empty, cold, empty, nothing. My pulse hammered. My flashlight beam shook. The fog seemed to sigh, curling around me. Engine off. Cruiser silent. No one inside. And yet, I could feel it. Patient. Waiting. Smiling. I stumbled back, tripping over gravel. Breathing hard. Tried to radio dispatch. Static. Tried to call my own number. Nothing. Only the fog. Only the night. Only the sense that the impossible had just happened. And that it could happen again. I knew, deep down, that I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until I understood. But even as I told myself to stay, I realized a terrifying truth. I didn't own the night. I didn't control my cruiser. And whatever had sat in my driver's seat, it already knew everything about me.